Died from overwork? Reincarnated into a world with even less time to read? We get it. Welcome to Manhwa Novel Recap, your second chance at catching up on all the action. We're a new channel starting our journey to the top with mist, might, and mayhem. No 80-chapter prologues, just the good stuff. Like to regain your past life's memories? Subscribe to claim your divine artifact, and ring the bell to reawaken your hidden potential. A parasitic consciousness had long sought dominion, its hunger gnawing at its ethereal core. It had been bound within a human vessel, a host whose spirit, surprisingly, proved more resilient than predicted. The original owner had resisted its insidious penetration, halting the flow of vital energy and severing his own conscious ties. The entity had scoffed at such resistance, believing it a fleeting defiance. To seize a mind was a matter of patience, a slow erosion until even the strongest would yield. Once the body weakened, the consciousness fractured, and the vessel would be theirs. Everything seemed to align with its dark designs. Yet a discordant note had arisen, an unforeseen variable that disrupted its calculations. Just as victory seemed within reach, an intruder appeared. "Who are you?" it demanded, for ordinary mortals could not perceive its true form. This new being, this inexplicable anomaly, possessed a strange ability to manipulate its very essence, to exert control. "Are you trying to drive me out?" The question ignited a primal battle for dominance, to expel or to consume. In a twist of cruel irony, the entity was outmaneuvered, ensnared. It found itself forcibly contained, trapped within a simple wooden doll. Fury, cold and sharp, ignited within its formless being. "How dare you trick me?" The indignity was unbearable, a burning resentment that would only quell once it repossessed the original body and crushed the meddling hand that had dared to interfere. But its vengeful path was once more diverted. A new, more immediate target presented itself, not the first unwilling host, but the one who had thwarted its grand scheme. A good body indeed. It observed the young, vibrant form of the interferer. This one leaned towards a shadowed yin energy, an inclination that would make its domination even easier. This younger body, it mused, would surely harbor a weaker sense of self, a less formidable will. "I'll take over quickly." The plan was simple: obliterate the consciousness, stimulate it into a trap, and watch the sense of self dwindle. Then, an anomaly. "This is—" the entity reeled, astonishment surging through its non-existent veins. What was the essence of this being? Primal desires, raw and untamed, clawed at its spectral awareness. The desire to kill, vast and absolute. Is this guy really a living being? Death, darkness, anger, murderous intent. A horrifying tapestry woven from these threads, brimming with yin energy. Or the entity, this ocean of death and bloodlust, was an irresistible siren's call, a primal urge it could not deny. It's the best. Ecstasy, pure and profound, washed over it. But the elation was fleeting, overshadowed by disappointment. This magnificent desire, if left unchecked, could blossom into something truly unparalleled. Yet something suppressed it, held it captive, preventing its full, terrifying bloom. I'll eliminate that factor suppressing your desire, to unleash its potential, to cultivate the perfect mind for the ultimate body. This became its new goal. Then, the impossible. "What are you?" A voice, sharp and clear, pierced its ethereal form. The mortal had recognized it, perceived its presence directly. An attempt to ensnare his consciousness failed. This can't be. It was an impossibility. Living beings could not directly perceive or interact with its kind. "I asked what you are." The voice persisted, unwavering. There was no longer a choice for subtlety. Even if crude, a forceful possession was now the only path. It began to devour the mortal's will, to consume his consciousness, believing he would have no alternative but to surrender. Esses, but then a shudder of profound perplexity. A. Its own essence, which had flowed into the body, was now being absorbed by the mortal, consumed at an unimaginable speed. "Stop! What are you babbling about?" The voice was dismissive. "Stop it! You're noisy." "No, I said you're noisy, didn't I?" A wave of terror swept through the entity. At this rate, it would be utterly devoured, obliterated from existence. "I'll give up. I'll leave, so stop it," it pleaded, desperate to escape. But the mortal's grip tightened, his essence now inextricably bound to its own, consuming it, absorbing it, until nothing remained but a chilling silence. A ragged breath escaped diviner Myosin, his shoulders slumping. He retrieved the sword from the floor, its hilt unexpectedly heavy. His eyes fixed on the still form of the Manor Master, a tense knot tightening in his gut. Could he truly do this? He had faced spirits and banished minor demons, but never had his hand been raised against a living man. The thought of it sent a tremor through his resolve. Yet the task remained, stark and unavoidable. He had to kill him. This was the only way to fulfill the madam's insidious request to neatly pin the entire affair on the unconscious man. He would weave a tale of demonic possession, of the Manor Master, driven mad, turning on himself. With the madam's quiet backing, the narrative would hold, and this unfortunate soul would be silenced. Let's do it, he urged himself. Time was a luxury he couldn't afford. The Manor Master's guards would eventually grow suspicious. Myo-sin took a hesitant step forward, the sword feeling like an extension of his doubt. Then a sudden piercing cold, a chill unlike any he had known, raising gooseflesh. His breath hitched. Flinch. His body stiffened, unbidden dread creeping up his spine. Slowly he turned his head, his eyes widening in bewildered horror. "Ah!" A hazy figure, towering 2 heads above an average man, loomed. It radiated an unholy, ghastly gaze. This is a giant monk, clad in robes stained with blood, a rosary of human skulls draped around its skeletal neck. Its face, a pale mask of death, was devoid of life. A demon? Myosin's professional instinct immediately recognized the malevolent entity. Such beings, to diviners like himself, were known as demons or vengeful spirits. Trickle. Cold sweat beaded on Myosin's brow. Had his spiritual sight inexplicably sharpened? This was the first time he had ever witnessed such a clear, horrifying manifestation. Shit! He cursed under his breath. His spiritual sight could not have suddenly heightened. This creature had to be of an impossibly high level, possessing a vengeful spirit far beyond his capacity. That was the only explanation for its terrifying clarity. Clang! The sword clattered to the floor, forgotten. Myosin's hands moved with frantic speed, forming intricate seals. Papak. Lean. Papak. B. Papak. B. Papak. Diu. Papak. Ju. He chanted, his voice a desperate whisper, his hands shaping the diamond fist mudra, aimed squarely at the spectral monk. Si. Ziu Si. His incantation was abruptly cut short. The demonic monk, its form rippling like mist, flowed towards him. Swish! It's useless, he thought. He still wore the 7 stars descending talisman beneath his robes, a protective charm. Direct physical harm should be impossible. Thwack! Ugh! A searing pain exploded across his face. Myosin blinked, stunned, the chanting dying. How? The blow hadn't come from the demon. It had come from Mok Gyeong-un. How was this possible? Mok Gyeong-un should have been incapacitated, a puppet for the demon. He should have been suppressed by the talisman. Myosin's bewildered gaze shifted, finally registering the impossible truth. A hazy, black thread stretched from Mok Gyeong-un's chest, connecting to the spectral form of the demonic monk. Myosin's blood ran cold. Something had gone terribly wrong. How could this happen? The implications were chilling. A connection between souls, a familiar. This meant the demon was bound to Mok Gyeong-un. But how could a vengeful spirit, a being of pure resentment, be made into a familiar? Such entities did not obey. Occasionally, exceptional diviners could command familiars, but those were ancient, benevolent spirits. It doesn't make sense. Mok Gyeong-un was not a diviner. An ordinary man, possessed by a demon of this magnitude, would either be overtaken or simply die. How can I remove this? Mok Gyeong-un's voice, calm and detached, cut through Myosin's frantic thoughts. What? Before he could react, Mok Gyeong-un's hand reached out, swift and merciless. Pak! Something fluttered to the ground, a familiar yellow paper. Huh? The 7 stars descending talisman. Myosin's eyes widened in horror. His last line of defense was gone. Without it, swish! The pale, colossal, demonic monk, its face now twisted into a ghastly smile, approached him. Fear seized Myosin. He fumbled, trying to form hand seals to conjure a protective incantation. Thwack! Ugh! A brutal kick slammed into his abdomen. Myosin doubled over, gasping, his body curling. The agony was immense. He fought against the urge to vomit, attempting once more to form a seal. Gah! His body arched, bent impossibly backward, his face darkened, veins bulging. Thump, thump. He knew what was happening. The demon had entered his body, seeking to extinguish his life force. If he didn't act quickly, he would be consumed. With a desperate surge, Myosin tried to raise one hand to form a single seal, but then a sickening squish. Squish! Mok Gyeong-un's foot came down, heavy and deliberate, crushing his hand. He was immobilized. Panic, cold and sharp, seized him. Huff, huff! Young master, please spare me. Please, if you just let me live, I'll do anything. His words were a desperate, panting plea. I don't need that. Mok Gyeong-un's voice was utterly devoid of emotion. If it's because I tricked you, Myosin stammered. No, Mok Gyeong-un shook his head. You did it to survive, so what can you do about it? But you also heard where the seal and secret manual are, right? Rah! Myosin stared, speechless. Mok Gyeong-un hadn't been tricked. He had always intended to kill him. Mok Gyeong-un smiled, a chilling, dead expression. So just die. Shivers. The smile remained, but his eyes were like those of a corpse, utterly still. That appearance was more terrifying than the demon itself. Gah! Gah! Blood trickled from Myosin's mouth, his face a grotesque mask of bulging veins. His body, racked with convulsions, slowly stilled. The silence of death descended upon the room. A low, weary sigh escaped the middle-aged man as he sat cross-legged on the polished floor, a sweet treat forgotten in his hand. His gaze drifted towards the pavilion, a structure usually bristling with escort warriors, now eerily vacant. A faint unease stirred within him. Was this truly the right path? He was Jung Myung-in, the inner Manor Master, entrusted with the very security of Yeon Mok Sword Manor's main hall. Once, nearly 2 decades past, he had been a celebrated martial artist, his prowess known throughout Shaoxing, Zhejiang. He remembered the Manor Master of his youth, a man of unwavering principle, a true hero in his eyes. Their paths had intertwined during a pirate suppression campaign, forging a bond that led him to join the esteemed Yeon Mok Sword Manor. He had admired the Manor Master, followed his every command with absolute faith. But time, it seemed, had warped everything. Inner Manor Master, you don't really wish for that lowly courtesan's son to inherit the position of the great Yeon Mok Sword Manor, do you? The words of Lady Seok, the first wife, echoed in his mind, sharp and cutting. He had initially resisted, sought to remain neutral in the internal power struggle. But her logic, though cold, had begun to chip away at his resolve. Mok Yu-chan, the youngest son, undoubtedly possessed superior martial arts. Yet he lacked the deep-seated connections, the network of allies vital for leadership. His ascension, Lady Seok argued, would inevitably tear Yeon Mok Sword Manor asunder. A fissure, a devastating division, seemed unavoidable if he were to inherit. Yes, he had eventually conceded. This was the sensible choice. Mok Yang-ho, the eldest son, despite his occasionally tyrannical nature, was the firstborn. His maternal lineage, the powerful Jinhua Seok clan, guaranteed immense support and stability. In almost every pragmatic sense, Mok Gyeong-ho was the rightful successor. Still, one particular detail gnawed at him, a persistent prickle of discomfort beneath the surface of his conviction. Even the physician couldn't do anything. How could a mere diviner? Lady Seok's dismissive tone replayed in his thoughts. And then her chilling reassurance, it won't take long. Just pretend not to know for about an hour. The Manor Master's seal, a symbol of absolute authority, it held the power to name a successor, to avert the very divisions Lady Seok so vehemently warned against. Could a diviner, a practitioner of obscure sorcery, truly uncover its hidden location from a man teetering on the precipice of death? It felt like a charade, a pointless waste of precious time. A dark suspicion bloomed in his mind, unwelcome and unsettling. Could they be resorting to intimidation, perhaps even insidious concoctions, to extract the secret from the weakened Manor Master? Such an act would be an unforgivable affront, a profound disgrace to the man he had pledged his loyalty to. His hand clenched into a tight fist, knuckles white. No, that couldn't be it. He was told to keep the area clear for an hour, no more. Still, a quick look, a mere glance, wouldn't be interference. With a renewed sense of purpose, Jeon Mok pushed himself up from the floor and strode through the vacant pavilion, heading directly for the main hall. Inside the main hall, a different drama unfolded. Mok Gyeong-un's hand had just released the diviner Myosin's neck. The man's face was a grotesque mask, veins bulging like cords, his breath stilled, pulse extinguished. A silent, mysterious death. Mok Gyeong-un turned, his expression utterly blank. He observed Myosin's corpse, its unnatural stillness, with an almost clinical detachment. A pale, spectral monk, towering and ethereal, materialized above the dead diviner. A string of clattering skull beads adorned its neck. Mok Gyeong-un reached out, his fingers brushing against them. The monk's eerie, ghostly eyes, filled with an unsettling luminescence, flickered. "You wear interesting things around your neck," Mok Gyeong-un remarked, his voice devoid of emotion. The skull beads, he realized, allowed his own ethereal form to make direct contact with the strange entity. He idly toyed with the beads, a peculiar fascination in his touch. "You said you'd be a faithful slave, so what should I call you?" The giant monk's lips barely moved, a soft, inaudible murmur escaping them. Yet Mok Gyeong-un heard it clearly. Demonic monk? Sounds more like a title than a name. Well, as long as I can call you something, it doesn't matter. The being, indeed, referred to itself as the demonic monk. A faint smirk played on Mok Gyeong-un's lips as he surveyed the unconscious Manor Master, whose arm lay brutally severed beside him. He stroked his chin, a gesture of deep contemplation. To kill the Manor Master, or to keep him alive? The decision was made swiftly. Killing him now would complicate matters immensely. Life, at this moment, served his purpose better. Then we need to change the scenario a bit. Demonic monk, can you move him in front of the Manor Master? The demonic monk, which had stood still, shook its head. Mok Gyeong-un's brow furrowed slightly. You can't do it. He had assumed that since the entity could kill, it could also exert physical force, or was it simply feigning inability? The mystery of its true nature remained elusive. Just then, a shaft of sunlight pierced through an opening, and the materialized part of the demonic monk's form vanished like smoke, dissolving into the light. It was like a shadow disappearing when bathed in brightness. This was a realm he found intriguing yet profoundly difficult to grasp. His gaze drifted to the bookshelf, laden with Myosin's sorcery texts. Perhaps answers lay hidden within those dusty tomes. A rhythmic thudding on the wooden floor outside announced an approaching presence. The escort guard's voice soon followed. "Is it not finished yet? Come in, Mok Gyeong-un commanded. The door creaked open, revealing the guard, whose eyes instantly widened in horror. "What? What is this?" The sight of the dead diviner Myosin, twisted in agony, was utterly shocking. The guard had expected arcane rituals, not a corpse. What struck him as particularly strange was his inability to perceive the spectral demonic monk. "Do you see anything here?" Mok Gyeong-un gestured vaguely to his left. "Pardon? It seems you can't see it," Mok Gyeong-un's voice trailed off. A pause, then a soft utterance. "Ah, I see." "Pardon?" the guard interjected, utterly bewildered. "No, I wasn't talking to you, guard." The guard's frown deepened. Was the young master speaking to himself? As confusion etched itself onto the guard's face, Mok Gyeong-un addressed the empty space beside him. "No, I don't think there's a need to reveal yourself." "Young master? What are you talking about?" Mok Gyeong-un offered the confused guard a small, knowing smile. "Don't worry about it. Rather, could you move that diviner over there in front of the Manor Master?" "No, young master. Why is the diviner?" The state of Myosin's body was truly grotesque, unlike anything the guard had witnessed. Veins bulged hideously across his face, his expression frozen in a silent scream of pain and terror. Murdered? But how? It didn't look like poison, nor did it bear the marks of physical violence. Instead of just staring, could you move him? Mok Gyeong-un's voice carried an edge of impatience. Why, yes. The guard, sensing the young master's rising irritation, quickly complied, haphazardly dragging Myosin's corpse before the unconscious Manor Master. Place him there as naturally as possible, as if he died while going berserk on his own. The guard's mind reeled. How could one arrange a body to simulate a death by self-inflicted madness? He did his best, but the intention behind the command remained shrouded in mystery. Was the young master trying to frame the diviner for the chaos in the room? The thought was plausible given the disarray. The sole mercy was that the Manor Master still drew breath, albeit with a severed arm. "Young master, what will you do now?" the guard asked, his voice hesitant. "I forgot something important." Mok Gyeong-un stooped to retrieve the sword that had fallen to the floor. He gripped the hilt, swinging the blade in graceful arcs before him. "Let's do it like this. The diviner, who was trying to treat the Manor Master with sorcery, was possessed by an evil spirit, severed the Manor Master's arm, and tried to kill him, but we stopped him." The escort guard clicked his tongue inwardly. A plausible excuse, indeed, to navigate this impossible situation. The bizarre manner of Myosin's death certainly lent credence to the idea of demonic possession. Yet, a nagging doubt remained. Would such a tale be easily swallowed? The first wife, Lady Seok, was not a woman to be trifled with. He cautiously voiced his apprehension. "Young master, if we try to deceive them clumsily, it may arouse suspicion." "Is it clumsy?" Mok Gyeong-un mused. It was truly a coincidence. But if we say that we appeared at the perfect moment to save the Manor Master, the first wife will not easily accept it. Moreover, this diviner was hired by her, so even more so. I see. We need to make it more believable. Mok Gyeong-un's grip on the sword shifted, reversing the blade in his hand. The guard watched, puzzled, as the young master brought the sword's gleaming tip to his own thigh. "Ya, young master? What are you doing? We need to make it more believable. This should be enough." Wait! The guard's protest was cut short. The sharp blade plunged into Mok Gyeong-un's thigh with a sickening thud. The guard's expression froze in abject horror. He hadn't merely pinched himself, he had stabbed himself with a sword. There had been no hesitation, no flicker of doubt. More astonishingly, Mok Gyeong-un betrayed no hint of pain. Not a groan, not a grimace, no discernible change in his expression. Could he truly feel no pain? The guard himself would have gritted his teeth, perhaps even cried out. Yet this young master stood impassive, as if immune to agony. A ruthless bastard, the guard thought, a chill running down his spine. To inflict such a wound upon oneself to avoid suspicion was remarkable, terrifyingly so. There was no need to go this far. This is the most effective way. I'll stop the bleeding. The guard moved forward, desperate to intervene. No, I need to lose more blood to look a bit pale. The guard was utterly speechless. This young master was becoming increasingly monstrous, increasingly frightening. Such a person should never, ever be made an enemy. Suddenly, the door burst open with a loud bang. The guard spun around, startled, to see none other than Inner Manor, Master Jang Myung-in, his face etched with concern, a scar prominent beneath his left eye. He drew his sword, the metallic rasp echoing in the tense silence. "What have you done?" Jang Myung-in demanded, his voice sharp with accusation. The escort guard frantically waved his hands. "Inner Manor Master, it's a misunderstanding. The young master and I—" he stumbled over his words. "More importantly, we need to take care of the Manor Master first." Just then, Mok Gyeong-un swayed dramatically, then collapsed beside him with a soft thud. The escort guard stared, momentarily stunned. Had he just fainted? And in such a way that he had prioritized the Manor Master's well-being over his own immediate injury? The sheer calculation of it left the guard speechless, a cold dread settling in his stomach. The quiet hum of the infirmary usually offered physician, no, a measure of peace, a soothing blend of medicinal scents and whispered remedies. Today, however, a frantic tremor coursed through him as his fingers pressed against the Manor Master's wrist. Only hours prior, The man's life force had teetered on the brink, a flickering ember poised to extinguish. Now a steady, robust pulse thrummed beneath his touch. His eyes widened in stark disbelief. The long-standing pallor that had painted the Manor Master's face was gone, replaced by a healthy, vital flush. The baffling symptoms that had defied all his medical understanding had vanished, leaving only the weakness born of prolonged unconsciousness. Recovery, he realized with a jolt, was not merely a distant hope, but an imminent reality. Yet a cold knot of dread tightened in his gut. The Manor Master remained lost to the waking world. His continued slumber had thrown the Yeon Mok Sword Manor into a desperate, chaotic scramble for succession, a struggle threatening to splinter its very foundations. If he failed to awaken soon, or worse, if something transpired before his consciousness returned, a sharp, imperious voice pierced the room's stillness. "How is he?" Physician No slowly raised his head. Lady Seok, the first wife, stood framed in the doorway. Her usual aura of arrogant self-assurance seemed to waver. Just this morning, her eyes had gleamed with a cold, almost triumphant ambition. Now, a subtle tremor in her gaze betrayed a deep, unsettling anxiety. An ominous premonition prickled at the back of his neck. Something was profoundly wrong. When he had first rushed to the scene, a chilling tableau had greeted him. The Manor Master's arms severed, the air heavy with the lingering scent of dark sorcery, scattered talismans, and crimson threads snaking across the floor. Yet the diviner who had performed such dark rites lay dead, and the third young master, Mok Gyeong-un, had been inexplicably tangled in the macabre events. Physician No carefully studied Lady Seok's trembling eyes. They held the telltale sign of a plan gone awry, a meticulously crafted scheme now unraveling before her. The Manor Master's improved state would not have escaped her notice. As a practitioner of martial arts, she possessed the acute perception to assess his condition. His recovery, far from bringing her joy, seemed to stir a deepening apprehension within her. He considered the implications. Had her true intention been not to heal, but to exploit his weakened state with sorcery? It was not a difficult leap to make. Everyone in the manor knew of the Manor Master's quiet preference for the youngest son, Mok Yu-cheon, as his successor. From Lady Seok's perspective, a full recovery for her ailing husband would be the last thing she desired. "Has his condition improved a bit?" she pressed again, her voice edged with a strange mix of hope and trepidation. Physician No hesitated, weighing his words with utmost care. They were alone. To reveal the true extent of the Manor Master's impending awakening might provoke her to desperate, unforeseen actions. After a moment of careful thought, he spoke, his voice measured and deliberate. "His complexion has brightened, and his pulse has indeed strengthened. However, his overall condition remains critically poor. It is merely a momentary resurgence, a brief flicker of vitality before death, a final surge before the inevitable end." Lady Seok's lips parted in a soft, sad sigh. A pained sound escaped her, as if in genuine sorrow. Yet Physician No observed the subtle shift in her expression, the almost imperceptible relief that settled into her eyes. It was a silent confirmation of his darkest suspicions. She did not want the Manor Master to recover. He cast a silent, desperate plea to the unconscious man. "Manor Master, there is no time. You must awaken. Only then can you protect yourself from what she might do." Outside, on the smooth wooden porch, Lady Seok's composure returned like a carefully adjusted mask. Her usual haughty expression settled back into place. Inner Manor Master Jang Myung-in, the unwavering, one-eyed female warrior Ho-ong, her personal escort, and two silent maids stood awaiting her. She approached Jang Myung-in. "Is the cause of death absolutely certain?" she inquired, her voice a low murmur. Jang Myung-in nodded, her single eye fixed on the rough cloth covering the dead diviner, Myo-sin. "Without a doubt, he did not succumb to any physical wound. I have witnessed countless deaths throughout my long years, but nothing quite like this. The exposed skin is grotesquely distended with veins, a sight unlike any I have ever encountered." Even to her seasoned eyes, the cadaver remained an unsettling mystery. Lady Seok averted her gaze from the disturbing sight. "What did the escort warrior report?" He stated that the young master came to visit the sick. Jang Myung-in replied, her tone even and professional. Visit the sick, Lady Seok repeated, a faint incredulity seeping into her voice. Yes. Then the diviner, as if possessed, suddenly went berserk. He severed the Manor Master's arm and attempted to end his life. The young master intervened. What an utter mess! Lady Seok's voice held a sharp, impatient edge. I apologize, Jung Myung-in murmured, bowing her head slightly. I should have ensured the pavilion entrance was properly guarded. Lady Seok waved a dismissive hand. What is done is done. But do you truly believe that the child merely came to visit and somehow stumbled upon this incident? What do you mean by believe? Jung Myung-in asked, a hint of confusion in her tone. Do you honestly think he accidentally discovered it? Lady Seok pressed. Based on the condition of the corpse and the surrounding circumstances, it appears to be the case, Jung Myung-in insisted, her voice firm and unwavering. Appears to be? Lady Seok's doubt remained palpable, a dark cloud clinging to her expression. Young Master Mok Gyeong-un sustained a sword wound to his thigh. The bleeding was extensive, and it could have been life-threatening. Jung Myung-in's assessment was purely practical. An injury of that magnitude was not easily faked. Had it been a minor cut, a mere scratch, suspicion might linger. But this wound left no room for doubt. Lady Seok remained silent, her gaze unwavering. Jung Myung-in understood. The First Madam harbored an inherent distrust for all the young masters, save for the eldest, Mok Gyeong-un. Where is that child now? Lady Seok's query broke the quiet. Pardon? Mok Gyeong-un. Ah! I administered immediate first aid to stop the bleeding, then sent him to the infirmary for comprehensive treatment. The infirmary? Lady Seok's eyes drifted to the west, towards the main building where the infirmary was situated. Without another word, her footsteps followed her gaze. A faint, pleasant aroma drifted through the infirmary, an intoxicating blend of medicinal herbs that filled Mok Gyeong-un with a quiet nostalgia. It was a scent he hadn't encountered since his descent from the mountains, a gentle reminder of days spent with his grandfather, meticulously gathering remedies. Those fresh, beautiful memories, however, stirred a conflicting emotion within him, a dark undercurrent of his own peculiar nature. A flicker of spectral interest danced in the demonic monk's white-pupiled eyes. It was a reaction to the intense, killing intent that emanated from Mok Gyeong-un, a darkness that even ghosts found profoundly unsettling. This was no ordinary malice, no mere residue of environmental resentment. It was a primitive, visceral darkness, qualitatively different from anything it had ever encountered. Mok Gyeong-un's voice was low, almost a whisper. So, did you find it? The demonic monk nodded, its ethereal form swaying slightly in the air. Where? The ghostly finger pointed to a section of the wall where countless drawers, each labeled with the name of a medicinal herb, lined the surface. The demonic monk indicated one specifically. O-yang. O-yang, the bark of the parasol tree, dried slowly in the shade, was not a common medicinal ingredient. It makes sense, Mok Gyeong-un mused to himself. They had deliberately chosen a less frequently accessed drawer, a perfect hiding place for something of immense value. The Manor Master's fractured words still echoed in his mind. Medicinal, hall, underground, jung, stone, door, inside, Saul. He had known there would be no obvious subterranean entrance within the infirmary itself. If it was something Lady Seok coveted, it would be deeply concealed. I'll know for sure when I check it later, he thought, surveying the bustling infirmary. Pharmacists moved with quiet efficiency, assistants sorted herbs, and numerous eyes and ears were present. Attempting to verify the hidden entrance now would be impossible. He would have to wait for the cover of night. The door creaked open. Guard! Go-chan stepped inside, his expression grim and weary. You're a bit late, Mok Gyeong-un remarked, a hint of impatience in his voice. Go, Shan almost scowled. The task Mok Gyeong-un had given him was far from simple. It demanded discreet movement and considerable risk. To be chided for tardiness felt deeply unfair. Where is it? Mok Gyeong-un prompted. Go. Chan retrieved 2 thick books from his tunic. Only these 2 were salvaged before they were burned. Burned? Mok Gyeong-un's disappointment was evident in his tone. Yes. The escort warriors guarding the main building are incinerating the diviner's entire bookshelf, and all his belongings. "Oh, really?" Mok Gyeong-un clicked his tongue in regret. He'd been curious about the diviner's sorcery, eager to examine his texts. To think only 2 remained. He read the titles: Synopsis of Various Philosophers, Basic Writings of the School of Yin and Yang, and Introductory Writings on the Strange and Unusual. Go-chan, bless his diligence, had at least rescued the thickest ones he could find. He would have to be content with these. "Good work," Mok Gyeong-un acknowledged. "But, young master, why do you need the diviner's books?" Go-chan's voice trailed off. He froze, his eyes widening in alarm. He slid the books back into his bosom, his hand hovering over them protectively. Mok Gyeong-un watched him, puzzled, but then understood. Footsteps approached from outside, hushed voices commanding the escort warriors guarding the infirmary entrance to step aside. The door swung open once more. A middle-aged woman, resplendent in ornate attire adorned with precious metals, stood framed in the doorway. Go-chan, startled, bowed deeply, his voice tight. "Greetings to the First Madam." "First Madam?" Mok Gyeong-un's eyes narrowed slightly. It was Lady Seok, the first wife of the Yeon Mok Sword Manor, the very woman mentioned in the information file provided by Guardgam, described as more dangerous and cunning than even the eldest young master. She hailed from the formidable Jinhwa Seoka clan, a martial arts family of considerable renown, and possessed formidable skills herself. Go-chan was visibly panicked. Though Mok Gyeong-un's disguise was perfect, Guardgam had warned against direct encounters with anyone from the Mok family to avoid unforeseen complications. "It is the First Madam's order." "Everyone, leave! Hoang!" Lady Seok's one-eyed escort commanded. The infirmary staff scrambled out, rustling past Go-chan, who sensed the danger escalating. He had never directly confronted Lady Seok, and he had no idea what her sudden appearance portended. Lady Seok approached Mok Gyeong-un, who had managed to raise his upper body on the bed, feigning discomfort. Go-chan desperately gestured with his eyes. Greet her. Greet her!" Mok Gyeong-un, feigning humility, clasped his hands and bowed his head. "Please forgive me for not being able to stand due to my injured leg." His voice, to Go-chan's immense relief, was surprisingly convincing. The critical test, however, lay in the subtle nuances of speech, the stark difference between the true Mok Gyeong-un and the impostor. Though the real Mok Gyeong-un was dead, this fake had managed to mimic his voice well enough during practice. Though the young masters rarely interact directly with the First Madam, Go-chan thought, his heart pounding. She is far more perceptive and suspicious than expected. Exposure here would spell utter disaster. Lady Seok stopped directly in front of him. "I'm not here merely to receive a greeting." Go-chan almost exhaled a sigh of relief. It seemed Lady Seok had not detected the deception. The impostor was proving more convincing than anticipated. They were still on thin ice, but if they could avoid any blunders, they might navigate this perilous moment. A sharp gasp escaped Go-chan's lips, a silent shout of disbelief. Lady Seok had suddenly pressed down, hard, on Mok Gyeong-un's injured thigh. Mok Gyeong-un lowered his head, a genuine groan of pain tearing from his throat. "Arg!" Damn it! Go-chan was utterly dumbfounded. The immediate problem wasn't the disguise. It was Lady Seok's suspicion of the injury itself. She clearly suspected he was faking it. "What did you see and hear there?" Lady Seok demanded, pressing even harder on the wound, her voice a cold probe. "Ugh!" Mok Gyeong-un gritted his teeth, his knuckles white. Go-chan couldn't remain silent any longer. That crazy bastard wouldn't be able to endure such pain for long. But any slip of the tongue would not only confirm Lady Seok's suspicions, but also make her a deadly enemy. "Madam, there seems to be some misunderstanding." Shing! Ho-ang, Lady Seok's escort, drew her sword with a swift, menacing hiss, its glinting tip resting against Go-chan's neck. "Don't interfere. Damn that woman." Go-chan was trapped, helpless. He couldn't speak, couldn't even exchange a glance with Mok Gyeong-un or mouth a warning. The fake was entirely on his own. He had to endure the pain, lower his head, and somehow ride out this storm. Lady Seok pressed harder still, her weight bearing down on Mok Gyeong-un's thigh, her voice a relentless accusation. "You may not know, but it's unheard of for a diviner of his caliber to die by being possessed by an evil spirit during sorcery. Yet you claim he was possessed, severed the Manor Master's arm, and tried to harm him, and you stopped it? Did you truly believe I would easily credit such a ridiculous tale? Snicker. Lady Seok's brow furrowed, a flicker of confusion crossing her face. Had she misheard? A moment ago he had been writhing in agony. Had he just sneered? If she hadn't been mistaken, that was indeed the sound of a sneer. You! Did you just— Mok Gyeong-un slowly lifted his head. A faint, knowing smile played on his lips, the corners of his mouth upturned in a challenging curve. Lady Seok stared, momentarily stunned. Had he lost his mind? No, what are you doing? Go. Chan's internal scream was almost audible, a desperate plea. This was precisely the moment to remain subservient, to avoid any hint of suspicion. Yet he was smiling. Lady Seok's voice was laced with simmering fury. If you truly— Let's not waste each other's energy on pointless things. Mok Gyeong-un cut her off, his voice calm, almost casual. What? You need the Manor Master's seal, don't you? The question hung in the air, a chilling revelation that shattered Lady Seok's carefully constructed facade. The air in the infirmary thickened, heavy with unspoken threats. Guard! Go Chan's breath hitched, a cold dread washing over him as Mok Gyeong-un spoke. The words, casually delivered, were a direct challenge, revealing a secret he knew Lady Seok guarded with ferocious jealousy. How could this young man, known for his timidity, possibly know? And why would he utter such a thing, practically inviting his own demise? It was madness. Go Chan's gaze flickered to Lady Seok, confirming his worst fears. Her face, usually a mask of haughty disdain, had contorted into something truly venomous. Yet no furious outburst followed. Lady Seok merely stared, her mind racing. She had come with suspicion, believing this insignificant half-son might have seen something, discovered a hint of her carefully constructed facade. But his directness, his unyielding confession, was baffling. Did he truly believe holding her weakness granted him leverage? Such arrogance was a grave miscalculation. He was, in her eyes, merely another obstacle to be removed once her son, Mok Young-ho, ascended. Her slender fingers, quick as a viper striking, lashed out, seizing Mok Gyeong-un's neck. Go. Sean knew then the depth of her martial prowess. Only Master Gam, the family's greatest warrior, could stand against her. This boy, Mok Gyeong-un, stood no chance. Yet the young man's eyes, far from widening in fear, sparked with a strange interest. He seemed surprised, not by the threat, but by the sheer unyielding force behind her grip. A flicker of something akin to admiration crossed his features. Is this woman truly so strong? He wondered, acknowledging the disparity between her delicate wrist and the power emanating from it. Her strength far surpassed Guard Go Chan's, a fact that resonated deeply within him. Lady Seok's grip tightened, intending to convey the immediacy of his peril. She expected panic, a desperate plea for mercy. Instead, his gaze remained steady, unnervingly calm. This was not the timid, weak-willed boy she had always dismissed. A new, unsettling thought took root in her mind. You, she began, her voice a low, dangerous whisper. Go. Sean swallowed, a knot forming in his throat. Had their carefully constructed deception been exposed? Were you hiding your true colors? She finished, the question hanging in the suffocating silence. Go? Sean blinked, relief and renewed apprehension warring within him. She had not uncovered their secret, but this new suspicion, this perception of hidden strength in Mok Gyeong-un, might prove just as dangerous. Lady Seok's expression hardened further. So this was your true self, Mok Gyeong-un's voice, though strained by her grip, was remarkably even. That's not important right now. Lady Seok's brows furrowed in confusion. What? If the Manor Master were to pass away, it would be difficult for the eldest young master to become Manor Master. Her hold on his throat constricted instantly, a furious warning. You bastard, impudent fellow. Do you think I can't kill you right here? Who do you think you are, trying to negotiate with me? A faint, almost imperceptible tremor ran through Mok Gyeong-un's body. This is a bit painful, he murmured, his gaze unwavering. Lady Seok studied him, puzzled. Her grip should have choked the life from him, yet his expression remained largely unchanged. Was he truly not in pain? I see. Negotiation requires a certain level of caution towards the other party, he continued, his voice barely a whisper. Caution? Do you think I would feel that towards the likes of you? She scoffed. This was the weakest of her husband's sons, his maternal lineage ruined. There was nothing to fear from him. Then the single phrase escaped Mok Gyeong-un's lips. Demonic monk. A shiver, colder than any winter wind, traced Lady Seok's spine. It was as if an invisible force had slammed into her, pushing her back, sending her stumbling 4 steps away. Her eyes widened, trembling. What had just happened? Nothing had touched her, yet something moved her, leaving an unsettling sensation that raised goosebumps. Mok Gyeong-un stretched his neck, a series of soft cracks emanating from his vertebrae. Having someone grab your neck isn't a pleasant experience, he said, his tone shockingly casual. Lady Seok glared, her voice laced with accusation. You! What did you just do? He merely arched a brow. What did I do? Just now, clearly, but the words caught in her throat. She couldn't explain it, couldn't describe the bizarre force that had repelled her. Mok Gyeong-un sat cross-legged on the bed, a calm, almost serene look on his face. Are you now inclined to negotiate? He asked. Lady Seok scoffed, regaining a sliver of her composure. Negotiate? Don't make me laugh. It seems you had a hidden trick, but do you think that luck will continue like it did just now? His response was immediate. Is it still not enough? Then shall we try with a maid? His eyes drifted to one of her attendants. The left one seems good. What are you talking about, the left one? She began, but her words died on her lips as a piercing scream echoed through the room. Every head snapped towards the sound. One of the maids, who had stood silently by Lady Seok's side, now floated impossibly high above the ground, nearly 3 meters in the air. Her struggles were silent, her mouth seemingly covered by an unseen hand. Disbelief warred with terror on every face. This is impossible, Lady Seok whispered, her mind reeling. She knew of powerful internal martial artists who could manipulate objects with true chi, but this was different. There was no discernible energy signature, no ripple of profound power. It was sorcery, an eerie, inexplicable phenomenon. Go-chan, equally stunned, could only stare. What strange ability had this young man hidden? Mok Gyeong-un raised a hand, his fingers moving in a slow, deliberate gesture across his own throat. A guttural gasp escaped the maid's lips. Her face contorted, veins bulging grotesquely on her forehead, her eyes rolling back into her head. She was on the verge of death. The chilling image of the diviner's lifeless body, twisted and grotesque, flashed in Lady Seok's memory. Her composure shattered. Stop! She shrieked. Mok Gyeong-un merely smiled, a bright, disarming smile that belied the horror he was inflicting. What are you saying? He asked, feigning innocence. It's obvious that you're doing this. I don't know what kind of sorcery this is, but stop it right now. Well, he mused, tilting his head. Since I'm trying to prove that I'm qualified to negotiate with the First Madam, wouldn't it be okay to take the life of one person? Lady Seok's expression hardened, a struggle visible in her eyes. This maid, Sowa, had served her since her days in the Seoka clan, her main family. She bit her lip, a silent battle raging within her. Finally, she broke. Enough! Stop it! I'll listen to what you have to say about negotiation or whatever, so stop it right now. Mok Gyeong-un nodded lightly, and with a soft thud, the unconscious maid collapsed to the floor. Her companion rushed to her side, a sigh of relief escaping her lips as she confirmed Sowa was still alive. Lady Seok also felt a wave of relief, quickly replaced by a surge of renewed suspicion. This power, unrelated to Ki, was baffling. It was an uncanny, mysterious force. When had he acquired such a terrifying ability? Her mind swam with unanswered questions, but for now, confrontation was too risky. She should have brought only martial artists, not defenseless attendants. Lady Seok's gaze met Mok Gyeong-un's, a reluctant acceptance in her eyes. What do you want to negotiate? She finally asked, her voice tight. Since the Manor Master will pass away today or tomorrow, don't you need the Manor Master's seal? Mok Gyeong-un inquired. Lady Seok remained silent, neither confirming nor denying, but her lack of protest was admission enough. The seal was paramount for succession, the only path to legitimate power. Yet a crucial piece of this puzzle eluded her. If you knew that, you could have kept it hidden, so why are you telling me? Why am I telling you? He repeated, a hint of amusement in his tone. Yes, you're also from the Mok family, so you should want to become the Manor Master. This was the core of her confusion. Why reveal such a powerful secret when he could use it to gain the retainer's support, to seize power for himself? Mok Gyeong-un leaned back, a casual dismissiveness in his posture. I don't particularly want to become the Manor Master. Lady Seok was momentarily speechless. He didn't want to become head of the Yeon Mok Sword Manor, a prestigious martial arts family wielding immense power in northern Anhui province. It was unfathomable. Are you expecting me to believe that? She challenged, her voice dripping with skepticism. You don't believe me? He countered, his smile unwavering. Would you believe it if you were in my position? No, I wouldn't. You might think I'm lying. If there's no convincing reason, she pressed, her patience wearing thin. Firstly, as I said, I have no interest. Secondly, I don't want to get involved in the succession battle and fight. How about that? Mok Gyeong-un explained. You don't want to fight, Lady Seok echoed, utterly bewildered. Yes, to be precise, I have no interest, nor do I want to waste time on unnecessary things. His words struck her like a physical blow. He considered the struggle for leadership of the great Yeon Mok Sword Manor a waste of time. The sheer audacity, the casual dismissal of something she had tirelessly strived for her son, Mok Young-ho, to achieve, was beyond absurd. She stared intently, searching for any sign of deception. If you truly don't want anything, tell me the location of the Manor Master's seal and the secret manual. Then I'll believe that you've really given up. Mok Gyeong-un scoffed, a short, sharp sound of derision. I can't do that. Then I can't fully believe your words, Lady Seok began, her voice laced with suspicion. Don't believe me then, Mok Gyeong-un interrupted, his bright smile returning. In that case, I'll make the same offer to the second young master. Lady Seok's composure, so carefully maintained, finally shattered. What are you saying? She stammered, her eyes wide with sudden comprehension. It's exactly as you heard. Since the first madam seems to have trouble understanding, let me explain kindly. I may not need it, but are you and the eldest young master, Mok Young-ho, the only ones who want the Manor Master's seal? Her face completely hardened, a chilling realization dawning on her. Mok Gyeong-un's smile broadened. It seems you now realize who holds the hilt of the sword. Lady Seok's anger erupted the moment she stepped into Haiwa Hall. A finely crafted chair became an immediate casualty, splintering under her furious kick. Her face was crimson, ragged breaths tearing from her chest, each exhale a testament to the storm within her. How dare he? The choked roar was raw with indignation and disbelief. Even in the infirmary, she had suppressed her rage, struggling to maintain a facade of composure. Now, in the privacy of her chambers, the dam within her had finally burst. Hoang, her loyal escort warrior, moved cautiously, his voice a low, placating murmur. Madam, please, calm yourself. She whirled on him, eyes blazing. Calm down. I painstakingly brought a skilled diviner, only for that outrageous fellow to seize the Manor Master's seal. It's absolutely infuriating. Her hand flew to the back of her neck, clutching at the rising pressure, her vision momentarily swimming with dizzying frustration. The sheer audacity stunned her. For years, she had meticulously managed intricate family dynamics, keeping a watchful eye on the ambitious second son, Mok Un-pyong, and the favored youngest, Mok U-cheon. Her meticulous calculations, however, had never once accounted for the third son, Mok Gyeong-un. He was a non-entity, devoid of martial talent, his maternal lineage almost completely ruined. He had truly been beneath her notice. But this shadow, this seemingly insignificant figure, had somehow emerged as a hidden threat, a cunning adversary she had utterly failed to foresee. Lady Seok's teeth ground together in frustration. She had expected him to crumble under even the slightest intimidation, to readily spill any information he possessed regarding the Manor Master's seal. Never had she imagined he would possess the guile to negotiate, to leverage such a critical piece of power against her. Was he always like this? The question echoed in her mind, deeply unsettling her. The Mok Gyeong-un she knew was a timid, almost cowardly boy, a repository of anecdotes about his fearfulness. Had it all been an elaborate masquerade, a deliberate act to conceal his true nature? A chilling thought took root. Until the death of his birth mother, he had been widely regarded as quite intelligent, even brilliant. Perhaps the facade of weakness was a shield, a means of survival after that traumatic incident. If so, he was far more dangerous than she had ever conceived. Those who mastered concealment and possessed unyielding patience were indeed the most terrifying adversaries of all. And then there was that bizarre power. The memory of Sowa, her maid, inexplicably suspended in the air, veins bulging, gasping for breath, flashed vividly before her eyes. It mirrored, with horrifying precision, the final moments of the deceased diviner, Myo Shin. The realization struck her with the force of a physical blow. That fellow must have killed the diviner Myo Shin as well. The words, spoken aloud, settled heavily in the air, cold with certainty. "Are you referring to that Mok Gyeong-un?" Hwang questioned, surprise lacing his tone. "Yes," she affirmed, her conviction solidifying. "It certainly made perfect sense. The diviner, renowned for his abilities, couldn't have simply succumbed to an evil spirit and gone on a rampage. No, it had to be Mok Gyeong-un's doing." Hwang, invigorated by her certainty, stepped forward. "How dare he murder someone you summoned? Leave it to your subordinate." "Before he can even use his sorcery, I will—" "Stop!" Lady Seok commanded, cutting him off with a sharp gesture. "But madam, if the Manor Master's seal really ends up in the hands of the second son, Mok Un-pyong, or the youngest, Mok Yu-shong, my son will have to bear the dire consequences." Her voice was low, edged with a dangerous calm. "But if we allow that fellow to manipulate us," Hwang began, still protesting her decision. "Who said anything about being led around?" A faint, predatory smile touched Lady Seok's lips. From a white porcelain vase on a nearby shelf, she retrieved a small, intricately carved jade bead. She pressed it into Hwang's palm. "What is this?" he asked, perplexed by the object. "Take this and go to the ghostly spirit pavilion in Mungcheong, and inform the pavilion master about the fact that the diviner Myo Shin was murdered." Hwang's eyes widened in understanding. Ah! The ghostly spirit pavilion, the very organization Myo Shin had belonged to. Her intentions were clear. A deeper, more insidious form of retribution awaited. The sting of the open palm against his cheek still throbbed, but Guard Go-chan's head was already reeling from the force of the slap. He stood before Guard Gam, whose sharp gaze was laden with disappointment, a low click of his tongue expressing his disdain. "Tisk, tisk, is it truly so difficult to keep an eye on a mere novice?" "Go." John's shoulders slumped in resignation. No, it's not. I told you that you were allowed to subdue him, yet you took him to the main hall and back? Are you out of your mind to do such a thing?" Gam's words were a relentless assault, and Go-chan, despite the tremor in his chest, remained utterly silent. In truth, he yearned to reveal everything that had transpired during his time away. He had fully intended to do so, to lay bare the disturbing events. But now, a profound hesitation gnawed at him. Why did this gnawing unease persist? Gam, a seasoned warrior, could undoubtedly handle Mok Gyeong-un with ease. Yet, after his unsettling encounter with the fake Mok Gyeong-un, a deep-seated fear had taken root within Go-chan. It wasn't just the strange toxicity in his blood or that eerie sorcery he wielded. What truly unnerved him was the pervasive feeling that the man was not entirely human. If he were to recklessly make an enemy of him, Go-chan instinctively knew, the consequences would be dire indeed. A wave of frustration washed over him. This entire situation felt like a twisted trap. Finding someone suitable to impersonate Mok Gyeong-un had initially seemed like a brilliant solution. Now, however, Go-chan felt ensnared, forced to comply with the impostor's unsettling demands. He remembered the chilling words, spoken with quiet menace. "I trust that you will keep your mouth shut." The memory sent a shiver down his spine. Though the impostor was currently in the infirmary, supposedly out of earshot, Go-chan felt an inexplicable awareness of his presence, as if he were being watched. He couldn't shake the unsettling sensation of unseen eyes upon him. As Go-chan wrestled with this strange, pervasive feeling, Gargam's voice cut through his thoughts. If you allow that fellow to cause trouble one more time, I will not tolerate it. He won't be able to move around much for a while anyway, not with his thigh pierced, Go-chan offered, hoping to alleviate Gam's concern slightly. Whether it's his thigh or whatever, just ensure he draws no further attention, Gam retorted sharply. I understand. And you're sure you weren't caught by the first madam, right? Gam pressed, his eyes narrowed, searching Go-chan's face. Yes, I'm certain. I was right beside him. However, the first madam was displeased because he visited the main hall. Go! Chan's mouth felt like sandpaper. The lines of loyalty had become blurred, indistinguishable. To think he had to withhold half the truth from Master Gam, his superior, the one person he should be fully transparent with. Gam shook his head slowly, a resigned sigh escaping him. Tisk, tisk. He had suspected it from the moment he killed the real Mok Gyeong-un. This impostor was proving to be a truly troublesome replacement. As time wore on, controlling him would only become more difficult. We need to hurry. The urgency pressed upon him. Despite the warning he had issued, if the impostor continued to act so independently, things could unravel quickly. A swift decision was needed regarding a new replacement. Keep a close eye on him. Do not take your eyes off him for even a moment, Gam instructed with stern finality. Won't you warn him directly? Go-chan asked, confused by the reluctance. There are too many eyes watching. The infirmary teemed with pharmacists and attendants. Though mere servants, they were also in the position of escorts, so he couldn't openly interfere or scold the fake Mok Gyeong-un in front of them. Moreover, he's cunning. It's not good to have a long conversation with that fellow. It was far more advantageous to keep him in the dark, ignorant of how the situation was truly unfolding. That way, replacing and dealing with him later would be a far simpler matter for them. Eek, oblivious to the urgent, hushed conversation taking place outside, Mok Gyeong-un reclined comfortably within the infirmary, engrossed in a book. He calmly turned the pages of synopsis of various philosophers, basic writings of the school of Yin and Yang, a tome of ancient wisdom. As he delved deeper into its contents, a particular passage caught his attention, piquing his intellectual curiosity. When a dead person becomes a wandering spirit and turns into a monster, the level of the monster varies depending on various conditions. The basic writings of the school of Yin and Yang provided an unexpectedly detailed account of monsters, a surprising depth for such an ancient text. Based on its descriptions, the demonic monk, his spectral companion, could be categorized as a type of ghost or evil spirit, a wandering soul that had ascended to the level of a monster. Low-level and weak wandering spirits take the form of earthbound spirits and can only influence the living by stimulating their sixth sense. The text meticulously outlined a 7-stage hierarchy for wandering spirits. Disregarding the numerous variables, the basic division was clear. The first level, the red spirit, was an earth-bound entity capable of little more than inducing goosebumps or a slight chill in the living. The second, the orange spirit, could possess individuals, making their bodies heavy or inducing symptoms akin to a severe cold. The third level, the yellow spirit, marked a significant escalation in danger. From this point onward, exorcism was deemed absolutely necessary. A yellow spirit possessed the terrifying ability to not only weaken the possessed individual, but also lead them to their demise. Based on the level, the demonic monk is a yellow spirit. Even within this classification, the yellow spirit was further subdivided into 3 stages of increasing lethality. The lower stage could manifest its form and directly instill fear. The middle stage could directly influence or inflict pain, and the upper stage, the most potent, could kill the possessed individual. A wisp of dark smoke materialized, coalescing into the familiar form of the demonic monk as it silently penetrated the infirmary wall near the entrance. Mok Gyeong-un observed its effortless entry. He hadn't known before, but it seemed the demonic monk's power was even greater than he had initially assumed. So that's what it meant by influencing living beings. He now understood the reason behind the demonic monk's inability to touch the corpse of the deceased diviner Myo-shin. A dead body ultimately had no life, so it couldn't be influenced. I see. However, the ancient text, for all its detail, did not contain all the answers. There were aspects Mok Gyeong-un had discovered through his own experimentation. He had directed the demonic monk to target the first madam, Lady Seok. But the moment the specter had made contact, Lady Seok had reacted instantly, pushed back with a surge of internal energy. They said that woman was a first-rate expert. Her maid, on the other hand, had remained oblivious until the demonic monk directly threatened her life, succumbing helplessly to its influence. What was the critical difference between them? Was it simply because the maid had not learned martial arts? Could it be that the power of monsters doesn't work well on those who have learned martial arts? The basic writings of the school of yin and yang was conspicuously silent on this particular facet of spiritual power. The door to the infirmary creaked open, and guard Go-chan stepped inside. Mok Gyeong-un's lips curved into a slight, almost imperceptible smile. He murmured, barely audible, "A good test subject." "Pardon?" Go-chan asked, puzzled, having not quite caught the words. "Ah, I wasn't speaking to you, guard Go-chan," Mok Gyeong-un replied smoothly, his gaze unwavering. "Shall we try lightly lifting your arm?" "Young master, what do you mean by that?" Shane's brow furrowed in confusion. At that precise moment, a chilling sensation, bizarre and otherworldly, coursed through Go-chan's entire being, transcending the realm of his ordinary five senses. It was a physical manifestation of an unseen force. His arm, without his conscious command, began to rise upwards. "Huh!" A startled gasp escaped him as he watched it move. "What?" Panic flared within Go-chan as he desperately channeled his internal energy, resisting the unseen pull. But his arm, trembling with the effort, could not hold out. It continued its ascent, forcibly lifted against his will. "What is this?" Go-chan's mind raced, struggling to comprehend the inexplicable phenomenon. But then, a dawning realization washed over him, a horrifying understanding of the source. "Ye young master?" Mok Gyeong-un's hand made a subtle, almost imperceptible wave. Instantly, as if an invisible grip had released him, Go-chan's arm dropped back to his side. Though he was once again in control of his limb, his face was a portrait of profound shock and bewilderment. "What exactly happened?" "What did you just do?" Go-chan demanded, his voice strained with lingering fear. "I just needed to confirm something." Mok Gyeong-un's tone was utterly devoid of emotion, clinical in its detachment. "Confirm?" "Yes. Why did you do that to me of all people? You were just the right fit. Aren't you a second-rate warrior, Go-chan?" "That's true. But what exactly are you trying to confirm? You don't need to know." Go-chan stood before the bed, his discomfort palpable, his unspoken thought clear. "Yeah, you won't tell me nicely anyway." A pang of regret flickered through him. Perhaps it would have been better to tell Master Gam exactly what had happened. Unperturbed by Go-chan's unease, Mok Gyeong-un nodded to himself, a silent acknowledgement of the new information he had gleaned. "It works on guard Go-chan." Go-chan, too, had immediately sensed the moment the demonic monk had taken hold of his wrist. His senses, honed by years of martial arts training and internal energy cultivation, were undoubtedly more acute than those of an ordinary person. And though he had offered a brief resistance, it had been futile against the demonic monk's unseen might. The demonic monk's power works smoothly on ordinary people and up to second-rate warriors. This seemed to be the stable criterion for its effectiveness. While not yet definitively verified, it was possible that a yellow-level monster's power might not significantly affect first-rate experts. If that proved true, it would be a slight disappointment. Well, even so, it's not useful. The demonic monk, for all its limitations, possessed remarkable utility in many ways. It could eavesdrop on conversations, just as it had done with Go-chan and Guardgam earlier. It could be dispatched for surveillance, its reach limited only by distance, and it was an invaluable asset for reconnaissance in blocked areas. How incredibly useful that was. As Mok Gyeong-un continued to read the passages further down in the basic writings of the school of yin and yang, a new thought began to form, a tantalizing prospect. It wouldn't be bad to obtain an even stronger monster. The fourth level, the Green Ghost, was described as terrifyingly dangerous, mandating immediate exorcism. It was a wandering spirit that had persisted for more than several decades, capable of influencing surrounding objects and inducing auditory hallucinations, enough to plunge the living into utter confusion. Mok Gyeong-un, the second young master of Yeon Mok Sword Manor, had always harbored grand ambitions. His martial prowess, evident from a young age, surpassed his peers. He had not only mastered the sword techniques of his paternal lineage, but also the formidable fist techniques of his mother's Hui Beishang family. Such talent, he believed, destined him for leadership. The current eldest son, Mok Gyeong-ho, was a known glutton for indulgence. He lacked the discipline and foresight required of a successor. Yun Pyong was certain the mantle would naturally fall to him. Yet, this conviction was a grave miscalculation. The leader, his father, harbored a deep fondness for Mok Yu-cheon, the youngest son. This favoritism was undeniable. Yu-cheon possessed an innate martial talent. By 14, he had already mastered all the Sword Manor's arts, reaching the pinnacle of a first-rate expert. As Yu-cheon's star ascended, the leader's decision on succession stalled. Mok Yun-pyong felt the leader's heart inevitably leaning towards his youngest sibling. He saw the leader's failing health not as a tragedy, but as a golden opportunity. Mok Yu-cheon, despite his prowess, was a concubine's son. He lacked the crucial network of allies and retainers that legitimate sons commanded. Without a direct declaration from the ailing leader, Yu-cheon would struggle to ascend on his own. The path to power, Yun-pyong realized, lay in eliminating his other contenders. Neither of his legitimate brothers posed a true threat in his mind. Mok Gyeong-ho, the eldest, was consumed by his desires. Mok Gyeong-un, the third son, was a recognized coward, deemed incompetent by all. Still, Young-ho had the powerful first madam, Lady Seok of the Jinhua Seok family, supporting him. Old retainers, rooted in tradition, also championed the eldest son's priority. Mok Gyeong-un, despite his weakness, had recently piqued Un-pyong's interest. The third young master, inferior in every aspect save a face that could charm a courtesan, had begun to covet the succession. The first madam dismissed him, but Un-pyong had noticed something else. Guard-gam, Gyeong-un's escort, was exceptionally skilled. Un-pyong had been so impressed he'd even considered requesting the leader to assign Gam to him. A brief investigation into Guard-gam's past had revealed a cautious secret, confirming Un-pyong's instinct to not underestimate the third young master entirely. Then, fate intervened. "You wish to become my man?" Mok Yun-pyong barely suppressed the twitching corners of his mouth. Before him, on one knee, was Guard-gam, the very warrior he had coveted, now offering himself. The timing was exquisite. "Please accept me, young master." Yun-pyong stroked his chin, a hint of satisfaction in his eyes. "Accept you? It's quite tempting." Guard-gam, listening to Yun-pyong's words, felt a flicker of approval. His original plan had been to observe the leader's condition and the manor's internal struggles. He weighed his options. Mok Gyeong-ho was too beholden to the first madam, and Mok Yu-chan, for all his skill, stood alone. Un-pyong, though cunning and suspicious, seemed the easiest to manipulate. He was the perfect alternative to the true Mok Gyeong-un, who was long dead. Guard-gam had anticipated Un-pyong's greed for talent would overcome his skepticism. "But the timing is quite exquisite," Yun-pyong continued, his gaze sharp. "Pardon? You know I hold Guard-gam in high regard. But for you to approach me now, just before the succession competition, it raises my suspicions." Guard-gam offered a slight nod. Un-pyong's skepticism was expected. He had prepared for this. I understand. However, I have a compelling reason why I can no longer serve young Master Mok Gyeong-un." "A reason you can't serve him?" "Yes. And what is it? I cannot reveal it immediately." Mok Un-pyong scoffed. What was the point of withholding such crucial information? The request struck him as absurd. Yet, Guard-gam merely offered a bright smile. "That information is one of Mok Gyeong-un's greatest weaknesses. It's too valuable to simply give away, but if you accept me, I will tell you everything." "Ha! Are you negotiating with me?" "Please understand my situation, young master." Yun-pyong feigned contemplation. "Very well. Let's consider that piece of information a future offering." "Can you share any of his other weaknesses, then?" "Of course," Guard-gam replied promptly. "What are they?" "Young Master Mok Gyeong-un currently cannot use martial arts at all." "What?" Pyong's eyebrow twitched, a spark of keen interest in his eyes. Is that true? There isn't a shred of falsehood in it. Did he suffer a mental disorder? You could say it's similar, Gargam hedged. The real Mok Gyeong-un had been dead for some time. The current one was a replacement who possessed no actual martial skills. Publicizing the truth would be catastrophic. Ha! A wide grin spread across Pyong's face. This was truly unexpected good fortune. The Yeon Mok Sword Manor was a martial arts family. For a potential leader to be unable to use martial arts was akin to losing all legitimacy. He had always known Gyeong-un lacked talent, but being completely incapacitated was a different matter entirely. He wouldn't even qualify for the succession competition. As Mok Pyong's joy became evident, Gargam pressed his advantage. If you accept me, I can provide even more useful information. Pyong pretended to ponder for a moment longer before smirking. I almost thought Gargam was playing the role of Huang Gai at the Red Cliffs. He was referring to the legendary general who feigned torture and surrender to deceive Cao Cao. He had suspected Gargam might be a spy sent by Mok Gyeong-un, knowing Pyong's long-standing desire to poach him. Gargam chuckled softly. I'm embarrassed to speak ill of my former master, but young master Mok Gyeong-un lacks the capacity to conceive of such a strategy. That's probably true. Then will you accept me? Of course. How could I let go of such a talented person? Gargam bowed his head in feigned gratitude. Thank you for accepting me. No, I should be the one thanking Gargam for making the right decision for the Yeon Mok Sword Manor. But I'm sorry to ask for a favor so soon after you've joined me. Gargam tapped his chest with a hearty flourish. Please give me any order. He needed to make a strong first impression. But the words that followed from Mok Pyong's lips sent a jolt through him. I thought Gargam, who was once an assassin, would be more than capable of doing it. Gargam's expression stiffened. He had suspected Pyong might have investigated his past, but he hadn't expected him to know this specific detail. He had underestimated Pyong's cunning, seeing him as a novice. He had let his guard down. The hour of the Zhu, late into the night between 11 and 1, shrouded the manor in slumber. Even the escort warriors guarding the infirmary entrance were dozing, their vigilance dulled by the late hour. A soft clatter, barely audible, broke the silence. Mok Gyeong-un, the true protagonist, disguised as the third young master, had found it. Behind the medicinal herb drawer labeled Oh Yang, a hidden entrance yawned open. The secret passage was surprisingly silent, minimizing any telltale creaks. Holding a lamp, he stepped into the darkness. A soft crunching echoed as he descended the underground stairs. They stretched far deeper than he had anticipated. This wasn't just one floor. It extended down what felt like 2, then 3 stories. It was an excessive depth for a mere hiding spot for a leader's seal and a secret manual. Such an elaborate construction aroused his suspicion. Finally, at a depth of about 3 floors, the stairs opened into a cavity, roughly 1/3 the size of the infirmary above. His eyes widened. 4 entrances, like stone doors, marked the walls. Above each, a single character was engraved, Si Ma Si Si. He recalled the leader's cryptic instructions. The items were inside the Jungstone door. There was no need to explore the others. He approached the Jung door. It swung open silently, revealing a straight tunnel passage. It stretched for perhaps 20 steps. He raised a foot to enter, then hesitated, his gaze drawn upwards. On the bumpy ceiling, at regular intervals, were small holes. Each was large enough to insert 2 or 3 fingers. They extended all the way down the passage. Puzzled, he scanned the cavity. A few fist-sized stones lay on one side. Just in case, he murmured. He picked up a stone, tapped it in his palm, and tossed it into the tunnel. Before the stone even landed, a sudden whoosh of air erupted. Sharp spears shot out from both sides of the floor, their tips glinting in the dim light. If he had stepped inside, his legs or thighs would have been impaled. A faint smile touched his lips. Interesting. Such elaborate traps seemed excessive for merely protecting a seal and a manual. Were they truly inside? He stared into the tunnel, clenching and unclenching his hands. He would know once he was inside. He bit the lamp's handle, freeing his hands. Without a moment's hesitation, he leaped, reaching for the holes in the ceiling. 3 fingers found purchase. An ordinary person would struggle to support their weight with just 2 fingers, but for Mok Gyeong-un, it was effortless. He reached forward with his left hand, his index and middle fingers finding the next set of holes. He moved, suspended from the ceiling, 2 steps at a time. His hunch had been correct. Moving above the floor without touching the ground prevented the traps from triggering. With this realization, he advanced swiftly, his fingers finding each successive set of holes. 20 steps later, the tunnel ended. A larger space, roughly 23 square meters, came into view. His eyes flickered with keen interest as he dropped lightly to the floor. "What is this?" Sacks lay scattered within the chamber, and numerous traces marred the floor. Deeply worn parts indicated countless footsteps. The walls bore impact marks. He walked over to a sack, peering inside. It held small pellets. He sniffed them, recognition dawning. Bijiokdan, the pill for abstaining from grains. It was a sustenance pill, a mixture of pine pollen and various grains, often used by Taoist practitioners during long periods of secluded cultivation in caves. Depending on its composition, it could also aid in expelling toxins. Mok Gyeong-un, with his extensive knowledge of medicinal herbs, had often consumed his grandfather's homemade bijiokdan as a snack. Why were there sacks of bijiokdan here? It suggested someone had stayed for a very long time, perhaps practicing martial arts in isolation. He toyed with a pellet, then turned his gaze. On one wall, a display case held several wooden boxes. "Is that it?" He approached, opening one that caught his eye. Inside, a book lay nestled. It was titled, Ignited Wood Sword Formation. "Is this the secret manual?" He quickly flipped through the pages. Intricate sword techniques and movements were described in detail. Though he had no martial arts training, he recognized it as swordsmanship. He wasn't sure if this was the exact manual the First Madam sought. He knew nothing of the Yeon Mok Sword Manor specific martial arts. He opened another box. Ignited Woodheart Transformation Technique. He took it out, quickly scanning its contents. It appeared to be a companion to the sword formation manual, outlining breathing techniques and key circulation methods for internal energy. I should take this too. The remaining boxes yielded no other martial arts books, but a few unexpectedly interesting items lay within. Still, no sign of the leader's seal. Only one box remained, near the floor. He retrieved it. Unlike the others, an old paper with a pattern torn in half was attached to its opening. It seemed a clear warning not to open it. He opened it without much thought, expecting the leader's seal. His head tilted. Instead of the seal, an old book, wrapped in a red rosary, lay emitting an intensely pungent smell. But what truly captured his attention was the cover. Is this human skin? He examined it closely. There was no doubt. An ordinary person might have recoiled in terror, but Mok Gyeong-un's expression was one of profound intrigue. What could this be? He reached out his hand, just as a wisp of smoke appeared, materializing from the ceiling. It was the demonic monk. Mok Gyeong-un had instructed him to stand guard, just like guard Go-chan. The monk's sudden appearance meant someone was approaching the infirmary above. The demonic monk seemed to try to speak, but then his gaze fell upon the object in Mok Gyeong-un's hand. A tremor ran through the monk's entire being. He dropped to the floor, bowing profoundly, his face etched with an expression of overwhelming reverence. A strange reverence settled over the formidable being, a wandering spirit known only as the demonic monk. He bowed low, an act entirely unexpected from such a monstrous entity. His gaze, usually filled with a chilling emptiness, was now fixed upon a wooden box, specifically at the bizarre book nestled within. Mok Gyeong-un watched, a flicker of curiosity in his eyes. The book, bound in what appeared to be human skin, was encircled by a string of prayer beads. Why did this object elicit such a profound reaction from the demonic monk? Unconsciously, Mok Gyeong-un extended his hand towards the macabre tome. His fingertips brushed against its surface. A sudden, powerful thud echoed in the quiet room. Mok Gyeong-un's eyes narrowed, his posture stiffening on the bed. A heartbeat. He felt it, clear and distinct, a pulse resonating from the inanimate object. It was a fleeting sensation, yet undeniably real. The paradoxical thrumming continued, growing stronger. This was not the life force of a living thing, but rather the essence of something profoundly linked to death. He continued to stare at the book, drawn to its strange allure. After a long moment, he lowered the lid of the wooden box, severing the connection. A potent attraction still lingered, a desire to remove the prayer beads and unveil its secrets. Yet the present circumstances forbade such indulgence. An intruder had breached the infirmary. That was the reason for the demonic monk's unexpected appearance. Mok Gyeong-un licked his upper lip, a hint of frustration in the gesture. His gaze then shifted upwards, towards the ceiling. Meanwhile, a figure cloaked in black, with a mask obscuring his face, moved silently across the building's tiled roof. Each step was light, almost imperceptible. He noted Guard Go-chan, Mok Gyeong-un's sole remaining escort, positioned at the only access point to the infirmary. The masked figure suppressed his presence further. A flicker of interest touched his eyes. Mok Gyeong-un, a man whose thigh had been pierced, theoretically only had one true escort left. Yet this guard was stationed at a distance, securing the passage, not by his master's side. This unusual deployment piqued his analytical mind. It presented two possibilities. Perhaps Mok Gyeong-un was sensitive, unable to tolerate an escort so close to him. Yet this seemed unlikely given the severity of his injury. The second, and more probable, explanation was that Guard Go-chan was maintaining a vigilant watch. His master, Mok Gyeong-un, must have ordered him to monitor the surroundings for any approaching presence. No other reason would justify such a separation. The masked figure stroked his chin thoughtfully. To maintain a watch in the dead of night, foregoing sleep, suggested something far more intriguing than a simple injury. His name was Jo Il-sang, one of the three escorts serving the second young master, Mok Young-pyong. He recalled his specific instructions. Just in case, Mok Yoon-pyong had stated, I need to check, whether it's a desperate strategy or not. His primary objective was to confirm if Mok Gyeong-un had genuinely lost his martial arts. If not, it implied that Guard-gam's request for acceptance was a ruse. If he truly couldn't use martial arts, then the request was sincere. A mischievous glint appeared in Jo Il-sang's eyes as he remembered the follow-up instruction. Shall I just check? That wouldn't be fun. If he really lost his martial arts, give him a proper scare. Tell him not to act recklessly. He had readily agreed, a smirk playing on his lips. His own martial prowess, hovering between a second-rate warrior and a first-rate expert, placed him a notch above Go-chan. He changed direction, ensuring he remained outside Go-chan's line of sight before leaping gracefully over the compound wall. Once inside, he climbed onto the infirmary roof, carefully crawling through a gap in the tiles. What secret was Mok Gyeong-un hiding? Why would he set up a watch despite his grave injury? Was the injury feigned? Or was the information about his martial arts loss false? Regardless, a compelling reason existed for such vigilance. He suppressed his breathing, hanging silently from the ceiling, observing the scene below. His eyebrow lifted in surprise. The sight before him was not what he had anticipated. Mok Gyeong-un was simply propped up on his bed, a single lamp casting a soft glow, reading a book. Disappointment etched itself onto Jo Il-sang's face. Just a book? He surveyed the room suspiciously. There was no one else in the infirmary. He hadn't entered through the door, and Go-chan, the only escort, was outside. It seemed impossible for Mok Gyeong-un to have been alerted to his presence. No one could have informed him. Could the secret lie within the book itself? This possibility could not be dismissed. Regardless, he needed to make contact, to ascertain the truth about Mok Gyeong-un's martial arts. He suppressed his presence further, moving like a phantom along the ceiling towards the bed. Then, with a quiet thud, he dropped down. In the same fluid motion, he snatched the book from Mok Gyeong-un's hands with lightning speed. He anticipated a reaction, a startled cry, a counterattack, anything. Yet, Mok Gyeong-un remained impassive. He merely looked at Jo Il-sang, his expression unreadable, almost nonchalant. Ooh, Mok Gyeong-un began to speak. Jo Il-sang swiftly pressed a dagger to his throat. If you don't want to die, be quiet, he whispered. Mok Gyeong-un closed his mouth. The situation seemed to be unfolding perfectly, yet a growing unease stirred within Jo Il-sang. This man. Any normal person would be startled, show signs of fear or at least tension. Yet, Mok Gyeong-un gazed at him with an expressionless face, as if such an encounter was an everyday occurrence, completely devoid of emotional change. His reaction suggested prior knowledge of Jo Il-sang's arrival, which was impossible, or he possessed extraordinary martial prowess, enough to protect himself. Jo Il-sang's eyes narrowed. A person, even one without martial arts, would instinctively flinch or move as a conditioned reflex when surprised. Mok Gyeong-un had done nothing. His stillness was absolute. The information about his lost martial arts felt increasingly dubious. He glanced down at the book clutched in his hand. The title made his eyes tremble uncontrollably. A wave of incredulity washed over him. It was titled, Ignited Wood Sword Formation. Among the people of Yeon Mok Sword Manor, no one was unfamiliar with this sword technique. It was the very symbol of their clan. This martial art embodied profound principles, attainable only by the leader of the Yeon Mok Sword Manor. A short, almost breathless laugh escaped him. What followed was an action he hadn't planned. Jo Il-sang seized Mok Gyeong-un's shoulder with the technique of Jomnasu, pushing him down. With the hand still holding the dagger, he struck a precise acupoint at the back of Mok Gyeong-un's head. A dull smack echoed. Mok Gyeong-un's head drooped, unconscious. Jo Il-sang exhaled roughly, his heart pounding in his chest, his breathing ragged. In a moment of sheer surprise at discovering the secret manual, he had instinctively knocked the man out. He had momentarily forgotten his secondary objective. He still needed to confirm Mok Gyeong-un's martial arts. He placed his hand on the unconscious man's acupoint and sent his true energy into Mok Gyeong-un's body. The confirmation was swift. If even a trace of internal energy existed, a reactive force or rejection would have occurred. There was none. He pressed Mok Gyeong-un's abdomen near the donjon. It was empty. The donjon was truly gone. A triumphant smile spread across Jo Il-sang's lips. The initial request from Mok Un-pyong to scare Mok Gyeong-un had vanished from his thoughts. He opened the pages of the secret manual, Ignited Wood Sword Formation, flipping through them with eager anticipation. Hee-hee! A sound of pure delight. His lips twitched uncontrollably as he devoured the first few pages. He had harbored a faint suspicion it might be a fake, but there was no doubt. This was the genuine sword technique. The very first principles outlined were extraordinary. Calm yourself, he silently admonished. He had never dreamed such a treasure would fall into Mok Gyeong-un's hands. The clan leader was gravely ill, on the verge of death. The retainers were consumed with anxiety. For both the leader's seal and this very secret manual, the leader's exclusive martial art crucial for succession had gone missing. Now, Ignited Wood Sword Formation was in his possession. This was more than enough. If his lord Mok Un-pyong could master this exclusive technique, the path to leadership was clear. Even if the current leader passed, the succession would undeniably fall to Mok Yung-pyong. A significant advantage had been secured. No matter how much the leader favored the youngest, Mok Yu-cheon, or even if the eldest, Mok Young-ho, stood in the way, a martial arts family would ultimately support the most formidable heir. As he basked in his triumph, a sudden piercing chill ran through his entire body. His skin crawled. Simultaneously, something pressed down heavily on his shoulder. What was this? Startled, Jo Il-sang tried to summon his internal energy, but before he could, a sharp smack landed on his donjon area. Ugh! It was Mok Gyeong-un, the man he believed he had rendered unconscious. What kind of strength was this? A man with no internal energy? This force surpassed that of a second-rate warrior. His body stiffened, caught off guard, unable to draw upon his internal energy before the impact. That brief, critical moment worked against him. Ack! Blood vessels bulged. A bizarre sensation penetrated his shoulder, agonizing and unbearable. He gritted his teeth, attempting to dispel the strange pressure with his true energy. Another smack. Not missing the beat, Mok Gyeong-un swung his fist, striking Jo Il-sang's jaw while simultaneously delivering a volley of punches to his abdomen. Blow after blow landed with relentless force. Normally, such attacks would have little effect on Jo Il-sang, a man nearing the first-rate expert level, but a moment of sheer carelessness, born from the discovery of the secret manual, had left him vulnerable, and with that inexplicable spine-chilling sensation pressing down on his shoulder, he could not endure the barrage of punches, each one aimed precisely at his danjon. "Ah! You bastard," he gasped. "You're sturdy." Then, with a sudden whack, Mok Gyeong-un seized the back of Jo Il-sang's head with both hands, pulling him forward. Then he slammed his knee into Jo Il-sang's face. A sickening crack filled the air. Ugh! The sounds of breaking nose and teeth were unmistakable, yet Mok Gyeong-un did not relent. He continued to pummel Jo Il-sang's staggering form. The impacts were relentless, blood-staining Mok Gyeong-un's fists, but he showed no signs of stopping. Cruel. The thought barely registered in Jo Il-sang's fading consciousness before darkness consumed him. How much time had passed? Jo Il-sang slowly, painfully regained awareness. His head throbbed, threatening to explode. What had happened? His mind struggled to piece together the fractured memories. But soon the horrific truth flooded back. Mok Gyeong-un, his face devoid of emotion, striking him like a madman. Damn it! He had dropped his guard completely. No, it was more than carelessness. The initial strike was indeed due to his overconfidence, after confirming the man had no donjon. But what followed was something else entirely. What was that sensation? He couldn't shake the memory of that spine-chilling pressure. It had stiffened his body, and as he tried to fight it with his internal energy, Mok Gyeong-un's relentless assault on his donjon and vital points had plunged him into unconsciousness. He should have died. What was that? Jo Il-sang was utterly perplexed. He had undeniably confirmed Mok Gyeong-un possessed no internal energy, yet the striking power unleashed upon him was almost equal to his own. Damn it, he gasped, each breath ragged. But for now those questions were secondary. He struggled to open his eyes, which were glued shut with dried blood, and surveyed his surroundings, his brow furrowed. This was not the infirmary. A strange, cool, damp sensation had been clinging to him for some time. It felt like some kind of cave. Drip, drip, huh? Jo Il-sang noticed beads of sweat, or perhaps blood, rising from his body and floating upwards. What strange phenomenon was this? Then, a horrifying realization dawned on him. Could it be? Am I hanging upside down? Now he understood why his face felt like it was bursting. It wasn't just the brutal beating. It was the rush of blood to his head from being suspended in this inverted position. His breathing grew even rougher. He didn't know where he was, but a profound unease settled deep in his gut. He needed to escape, and quickly. He exhaled slowly, trying to gather the energy from his donjon. But what was this? No strength surged through his body. He tried to concentrate, but the sensation in every part of his body, save his face, had simply vanished. Why is this happening? A bewildered cry escaped his lips. A presence. He heard it, subtle yet distinct. Looks like you're awake. He strained his vision towards the source of the sound. Mok Gyeong-un was walking on the ceiling, or so it appeared through his inverted vision. Startled by the paralysis that gripped him, Jo Il-sang screamed. What the did you do? In response, Mok Gyeong-un's mouth stretched into a wide, unsettling smile, a grin that seemed to tear at his ears. Who knows? What could I have done? A shudder ran through Jo Il-sang. Despite the smile, an ominous malice radiated from Mok Gyeong-un's eyes. For the first time in his life, Jo Il-sang felt a primal, chilling fear. A chill wind, unseen but felt, snaked through the subterranean chamber, carrying with it the faint metallic tang of fear. Jo Il-sang, suspended precariously, felt a tremor ripple through his body, a sensation entirely alien to his seasoned nerves. He had faced down countless threats, emerged from battles unscathed, but this was different. He tried to move, to twist away, but his limbs remained unresponsive, heavy and inert, bound not by ropes but by something far more insidious. His eyes, wide with a terror he had never known, fixed on the man before him. What did you do to my body?" he stammered, the words rasping in the silence. Mok Gyeong-un, the third young master, offered a smile that was all teeth and no warmth. It was a ghastly, unsettling grin, framed by eyes that remained utterly still, devoid of any light or life, like those of a corpse staring into the void. "Who knows?" Mok Gyeong-un's voice was light, almost conversational, a chilling counterpoint to his dead gaze. What could I have done? Jo Il-sang's mind reeled. This was not the Mok Gyeong-un he knew, the pathetic, disregarded scion of the Mok family. The aura emanating from him was cold, ancient, and deeply powerful. It was as if he stood before a being from a different realm, not a mere mortal. A primal fear, cold and sharp, pierced through Jo Il-sang's practiced composure. Mok Gyeong-un took a step closer, his movements fluid and unnervingly graceful. You seem to be trembling quite a lot, he observed, his gaze lingering on Jo Il-sang's immobile form. Don't worry. If it were the usual method, I would have started by cutting somewhere. He paused, a hint of something dark playing at the corners of his lips. But now I've used dispersion powder. Dispersion powder? Jo Il-sang managed, his voice barely a whisper. Mok Gyeong-un gestured vaguely upwards. This is a truly good place, he mused, as if contemplating the virtues of a secluded garden. Previously, when I needed medicinal herbs, I had to search the mountains thoroughly to find them. But with so many medicinal herbs here, I can combine them as much as I need. The third young master's casual mention of herbs sent a fresh wave of alarm through Jo Il-sang. Combining medicinal herbs? What did you do to me? Mok Gyeong-un's explanation came with an unnerving nonchalance, as if he were discussing a common recipe. It's nothing much. If you grind and mix the toxic rose-bay, soul-numbing powder and the roots of trillium, you can paralyze everything except the head. A silent scream echoed in Jo Il-sang's mind. Since when did this young master possess such arcane knowledge of medicinal herbs, of poisons? He swallowed hard, his throat dry, his eyes wide with a terror that clawed at his very soul. Mok Gyeong-un bent slightly, meeting his gaze, then reached out and took a firm grip on Jo Il-sang's hair. These things aren't that important, actually, Mok Gyeong-un stated, his voice dropping to a low, serious tone. What's important is why the second young master, Mok Yun-pyong, sent you. Jo Il-sang clamped his mouth shut. He had come wearing a mask for a reason. He had no intention of revealing his master's secrets. Mok Gyeong-un chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. You've become tight-lipped. Of course, since you came wearing a mask, you have no intention of talking nicely, right? What should I do? A little earlier, Go-chan had watched, dumbfounded, as the third young master, who moments ago could barely move due to his pierced thigh, had subdued Jo Il-sung, a martial artist nearing the level of a first-rate expert. It defied all understanding. Just how much had Mok Gyeong-un been hiding? He's a man of the second young master? Mok Gyeong-un had asked, his voice calm amidst the chaos. That's right, Go-chan had confirmed, his own mind reeling. Why did he send him? I don't know either, Go-chan admitted. Judging from the fact that he even wore a mask, it doesn't seem to be for a good reason. The air thickened with unspoken questions. Even if he's the second young master, it's unlikely that he would have made a reckless assassination attempt while the leader is still alive. I really don't know why he sent him. Mok Gyeong-un had merely nodded slowly. Then I'll have to find out directly. Go. Chan's heart had leaped into his throat. What? You don't mean you're going to torture him or something, right? The words were out before he could stop them. A faint, unnerving smile had touched Mok Gyeong-un's lips. That would be a good method, too. Why, young master? Go-chan had pleaded, desperation lacing his voice. It's better to let him go. Mok Gyeong-un had tilted his head, a gesture of feigned innocence. Let him go! Go-chan, sensing the dangerous path the young master was treading, had pressed his case. The second young master has retainers who follow him and has built his own power base. If we carelessly provoke him by mistreating his man, there could be consequences, you mean? Mok Gyeong-un finished his sentence, his eyes sharp and knowing. Yes, Go-chan had conceded, his voice tight. I apologize for angering you, but if we provoke him carelessly, it could become dangerous. A low hum had escaped Mok Gyeong-un's lips. Go-chan had observed him with an uneasy expression. The young master's mind worked in terrifyingly cunning ways, yet his actions were utterly unpredictable. One thing, however, Go-chan had been certain of. In his current weakened state, Mok Gyeong-un could do nothing but endure whatever provocation the second young master had orchestrated. Well, I'll think about it, Mok Gyeong-un had finally said. You really shouldn't touch him, Go-chan had reiterated, a final, desperate warning. Yes, I understand what you're saying, Go-chan. Mok Gyeong-un's response had been polite, even reassuring. Right, Go-chan had thought, trying to quell the unease in his gut. No matter how unpredictable, surely Mok Gyeong-un, aware of his current situation, would not do anything reckless. Unlike the first madam, who was cautious despite her arrogance, the second young master was cunning, but still young and emotional. He wouldn't let this slide. Now, a tense calm had settled over Jo Il-sang. He took a slow, deliberate breath, attempting to regain some semblance of control. What do you intend to do, and what can you do? He challenged, his voice regaining a fraction of its former authority. What do you mean by that? Mok Gyeong-un's eyes, devoid of expression, remained fixed on him. Since you know who I am, it would be better to let me go. Jo Il-sang pushed, trying to establish dominance. Even if you've already done it, if you further harm me, do you think the second young master will stay still? He deliberately invoked Mok Un-pyong's name, a shield he believed impervious. He had worn a mask to handle the matter quietly, yes, but the second young master's pride was immense. He would never forgive anyone who touched his men. Mok Gyeong-un's eyebrow quirked, a flicker of something akin to amusement crossing his face. Since it has come to this, let's make a deal. Jo Il-sang continued, sensing a fleeting opportunity. A deal? Yes. If you let me go and give me the secret manual of ignited wood sword formation, I will speak to the young master and ask him to leave you alone, the third young master. Leave me alone means, Mok Gyeong-un prompted, his tone unreadable. It means you will be able to live safely even if the young master becomes the leader. And the price is the secret manual of ignited wood sword formation, right? That's right. Jo Il-sang maintained a strong stance, despite the fear coiling in his gut. In such a situation, he believed, a clear hierarchy must be established. Any sign of weakness would be met with aggression. In the end, he'll have no choice but to yield, Jo Il-sang thought. The ignited wood sword formation was a pearl in the pig's throat for Mok Gyeong-un. His maternal family was ruined, his retainers non-existent. If it was an item too grand for him anyway, it wouldn't be a bad condition to hand it over and preserve his life. Suddenly, Mok Gyeong-un tightened his grip on Jo Il-sang's hair. Huh? You? Jo Il-sang gasped, the sudden pressure jarring. Interesting, Mok Gyeong-un mused, his voice laced with a chilling amusement. In a situation where your body may not remain intact, you trust your backing and make a reverse proposal. You bastard, Jo Il-sang began, but the words died in his throat. I've heard enough, Mok Gyeong-un interrupted, his smile widening. From now on, I'll start with your fingers one by one. He reached into his robes, producing a peculiarly shaped blade, its edge gleaming dully in the dim light. Jo Il-sang's eyes widened in horror. What? This is a blade called hasak, Mok Gyeong-un explained calmly, turning the tool over in his fingers. It's used for trimming medicinal herbs. It's for cutting hard things, so it can easily cut fingers or toes. What? You can trust me because it's been verified. His tone was light, almost conversational, as if discussing the weather. He had, in fact, used it quite a lot. A cold dread seeped into Jo Il-sang's bones. You, he stammered, his voice cracking. Did you not understand what I said? I came under the orders of the second young master. If you harm me, he will. Yes, you talk too much, so I'll cut one and start. Mok Gyeong-un's words cut through Jo Il-sang's desperate plea. He reached down, seizing Jo Il-sang's right wrist, limp and lifeless. Then, with precise, deliberate movements, he inserted Jo Il-sang's index finger into the hole of the hasak. Jo Il-sang's face turned a ghastly pale. Stop! Are you really insane? Like this, a sickening crunch echoed in the confined space. Jo Il-sang's head snapped to the side, his eyes fixed on the floor. There, detached and still, lay the two joints of his index finger. He was speechless. No pain registered, his body still numb from the dispersion powder. But the sight of his severed digit, so stark against the stone floor, rendered him numb with a different kind of horror. Mok Gyeong-un's voice, calm and even, broke the silence. It doesn't hurt, so it doesn't feel real, right? That's why, when using hasak, I usually don't paralyze the body with dispersion powder and just tie them up. That way they can feel some pain. But since you've learned martial arts, I had no choice. The third young master had used the powder for a reason. To enhance the visual impact, he had brought the severed finger right before Jo Il-sang's eyes. I've rambled on for too long, Mok Gyeong-un continued, a predatory glint in his unmoving eyes. From now on, I'll just cut one by one until you talk. He reached out again, his hand seizing Jo Il-sang's second finger, the middle finger of his right hand. Jo Il-sung, dazed by the shock, snapped back to reality. Stop! He screamed, a raw primal sound tearing from his throat. But Mok Gyeong-un did not pause. Another sickening crunch, and the middle finger too fell to the floor, twitching faintly like a grotesque worm. Jo Il-sang was forced to watch it, his mind threatening to unravel. Then, Mok Gyeong-un's voice, calm and utterly devoid of mercy, spoke again. Shall we do the thumb this time? As the words hung in the air, Mok Gyeong-un gripped Jo Il-sang's thumb, inserting it directly into the hasak's hole. Jo Il-sang's breath hitched. He was right-handed. If his thumb was severed, his right hand would be useless. Esto! The word choked in his throat. He knew, with a horrifying certainty, that nothing he could say would stop this madman. Mok Gyeong-un's hand holding the hasak began to exert pressure. At that agonizing instant, the words burst from Jo Il-sang's mouth, a desperate torrent. Young Master Yoon Pyong sent me to confirm whether you really lost your martial arts or not. The pressure on the hasak eased, the blade barely having broken the skin of his thumb. Not severed. He was spared. A violent thumping filled Jo Il-sang's ears. His own heart, though his body was paralyzed, pounded with an unnatural ferocity. He had endured torture before, but this, Mok Gyeong-un's method had pushed him to the brink of death with horrifying speed. Ha 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 ha, he gasped, ragged breaths tearing at his lungs. He sent you to confirm whether I lost my martial arts or not. Mok Gyeong-un repeated, his voice thoughtful. That's right, Jo Il-sang confirmed, his fear now so profound that his manner of speaking had become submissive, almost polite. Mok Gyeong-un's expression betrayed a flicker of puzzlement. He had not been exposed as a fake, so the order seemed strange. His mind, however, raced. If he received such an order without being exposed as a fake, it means he obtained that information from someone. But there are only two people who know that I'm a fake. Guard-go-chan and Guard-gam. Go. Chan had been with him continuously. A slow, knowing smile spread across Mok Gyeong-un's face. He switched sides quickly. Mok Gyeong-un was convinced. Guard-gam was the source. His betrayal had been inevitable, but not this swift. This presented a minor complication. But at least he used his brain, Mok Gyeong-un conceded inwardly. To avoid responsibility, Guard-gam must have couched the information in a way that suggested Mok Gyeong-un had merely lost his martial arts, not that he was a fake. Mok Gyeong-un chuckled, the sound devoid of mirth. By any chance, was the person who told you this Guard-gam? Jo Il-sang's eyes widened slightly. How could Mok Gyeong-un have known? He shouldn't have known that Guard-gam had pledged loyalty to Mok Un-pyong. Had he suspected it from the beginning? Jo Il-sang, caught off guard, quickly answered. That's right. As expected, Mok Gyeong-un murmured, nodding slowly. It hadn't deviated from his expectations. He stared intently at Jo Il-sung, his gaze piercing. Now, what should I do? Jo Il-sang, desperate, launched into a pleading torrent of words. Please spare me. I will definitely keep today's events a secret. I won't tell young Master Un-pyong, so— what should I do about this? Mok Gyeong-un interrupted, a feigned sigh escaping his lips. Pardon. I think I've inflicted too many wounds for that. Mok Gyeong-un observed him dispassionately. Jo Il-sung, unaware of his own appearance, was a battered wreck. His nose bone was broken and depressed, his cheekbones and forehead grotesquely protruding, and two of his fingers were gone. Mok Un-pyong would undoubtedly discover it and be enraged. Why, young master? Even if I disappear, young Master Un-pyong will surely seek revenge. Well, probably, Mok Gyeong-un conceded with a shrug. But you don't need to worry about that. Why? Jo Il-sang's voice was filled with a desperate hope. Everyone seems to dread the secret manual of ignited wood sword formation, so if need be, I can use it to negotiate. Isn't that okay? Jo Il-sang's mind went blank. Mok Gyeong-un was right. If he negotiated using the leader's exclusive sword technique, even Mok Yun-pyong, who cherished his subordinates, would likely let it pass. Dazed and utterly perplexed, Jo Il-sang stammered, "Young master, I had no idea you were so brilliant and outstanding. So, like Gargam, I also want to pledge my loyalty to you." "To me?" Mok Gyeong-un's voice was laced with an unnerving curiosity. "Why, yes, please give me a chance." "I will dedicate my life to you." All sorts of words spilled from his lips, desperate pleas for survival. "You'll even dedicate your life?" That's right. So please." Is that so?" Mok Gyeong-un tilted his head slightly, then turned and walked away. "Young master?" "Young master!" Jo Il-sung called out, a wave of unease washing over him. It wasn't long before Mok Gyeong-un reappeared, carrying a wooden box. It bore strange traces on its surface, as if something peculiar had once been attached to it. Mok Gyeong-un placed the box carefully beneath Jo Il-sang's head, which still hung upside down. "What's this?" Jo Il-sang asked, his voice filled with bewilderment. Mok Gyeong-un opened the lid. Inside, something that looked like an ancient book bound by an old rosary was revealed. Jo Il-sang stared, utterly clueless, until his eyes began to tremble. A horrifying realization dawned on him. The material of the book was not paper. To the perplexed Jo Il-sung, Mok Gyeong-un explained, his voice eerily calm. "Before you woke up, I tried to read this book, but strangely, the part tied with the rosary was fixed, and no matter what I did, it couldn't be removed." How will you?" Jo Il-sang stammered, a fresh wave of dread washing over him. "I saw in the basic writings of the school of yin and yang that there is something overflowing with spiritual energy that seals evil things. This rosary seems to be one of them." "Young master, please," Jo Il-sung pleaded, his voice cracking. Mok Gyeong-un ignored him, continuing his chilling monologue. "But it says that if there's another evil thing added to that sealing item, its power weakens." "What are you trying to do?" Jo Il-sung's voice was a desperate whisper. Like this, a swift, clean slice. "Ack!" Jo Il-sang's scream was cut short, a gurgling sound escaping his throat as his vocal cords were severed. It was the final sound he would make. Mok Gyeong-un's smile was bright, unsettling. "You said you could even dedicate your life, right?" You son of a bitch." Jo Il-sang's eyes, filled with incandescent resentment, glared at Mok Gyeong-un. To lose his life like this, used as a tool, was an unbearable shame. Red blood, warm and gushing, poured from Jo Il-sang's sliced throat. It flowed freely, cascading into the wooden box, soaking the book made of human skin and the ancient rosary that bound it. The blood of a dying man, blood filled with raw, potent resentment, saturated the strange tome. A bizarre phenomenon began. A faint thump, thump, thump emerged from the book, a sound like a distant, distorted heartbeat. It grew louder, more distinct, echoing in the chamber. Something like blood vessels began to bulge on the outer surface of the book, pulsing faintly. "Oh-ho," Mok Gyeong-un observed, a profound satisfaction blooming in his chest. The heartbeat grew louder, faster, an urgent, frantic rhythm. Then, a series of sharp cracks fractured the silence. The rosaries, which had bound the book for untold ages, trembled violently, as if in agony. They suddenly compressed, as if gripped by an unseen force, and shattered into countless pieces. The fragments were sucked into the pool of blood in the wooden box, vanishing without a trace. And then the cavity itself seemed to come alive. A horrifying gush, gush, gush erupted. Blood, thick and crimson, began to fall like a waterfall from the entire wall of the cavity, flowing along the ceiling, cascading downwards. It was a sight that defied belief, a grotesque, impossible deluge. The corners of Mok Gyeong-un's mouth stretched, almost reaching his ears. A chilling smile of triumph spread across his face as he surveyed the macabre scene. The ancient seal was broken. The fifth level, Green Ghost, a dangerous wandering spirit existing for over 100 years, capable of enormous influence, of causing auditory and visual hallucinations, of inflicting pain, was now stirring. The air within the cavern hung heavy, a palpable silence that stretched taut with anticipation. Mok Gyeong-un stood amidst the lingering echoes of his shattered rosary, a faint shimmer of displaced magic still clinging to the damp stone. His gaze remained fixed on the cavern walls, a strange eagerness stirring deep within him. This was it. A guttural, wet sound erupted from the stone, growing swiftly in volume. Blood, thick and viscous, began to seep from every crack and crevice, not dripping but gushing forth like crimson waterfalls. It flowed down the walls, pooled on the ceiling, and cascaded onto the floor, quickly transforming the cavern into a churning, blood-filled basin. The air grew thick with the coppery scent of it. Mok Gyeong-un's lips curled upward, a faint smile playing on his face. His heart quickened with a thrill that bordered on exhilaration. This was no mere demonic entity, no common apparition. This was something far grander, far more profound than the demonic monk he had just encountered. He had hoped for a formidable challenge, perhaps an ancient spirit known as a green ghost, an entity requiring a gathering of diviners to subdue. Yet what was unfolding before him promised something far beyond that. A deep, rhythmic thrumming began, a sound like a giant pulse echoing within the blood-soaked space. Thump, thump, thump. The beat resonated in Mok Gyeong-un's chest. In the very center of the blood-filled cavity, the sound intensified, and then, impossibly, a heart began to form. Around this nascent organ, the surrounding blood swirled and coalesced, gathering with unnerving speed. One organ took shape, then another and another, each beat of the phantom heart seemingly drawing more of the sanguine tide into itself. Bones emerged next, stark and white against the crimson, swiftly encasing the newly formed organs. Then muscles rippled and attached themselves to the skeletal framework with an audible series of clicks and snaps. Finally, a pale, almost translucent skin stretched taut over the nascent form. It was a birth both grotesque and mesmerizing, an inverse miracle unfolding before his very eyes. The remaining blood in the cavity surged upwards, a reverse waterfall that enveloped the newly formed being. In an instant, the crimson cascade was drawn into the ceiling, vanishing as if consumed by the very stone. And then, the entity revealed itself. It was stunning in its unnatural beauty, a figure with a deathly pale face framed by long, disheveled hair, crowned by an ornate circlet. It wore a deep red inner garment beneath a flowing black outer robe, and its slender fingers clutched a long, elegant pipe. Its presence was disturbingly natural, more defined, more tangible than the spectral demonic monk. A wisp of smoke curled from its red lips as it took a slow, deliberate puff from the pipe. Though its features suggested the innocence of late adolescence, its ancient attire defied any easy categorization of gender. Mok Gyeong-un, however, cared little for such distinctions. "Quite a grandiose entrance," he began, his voice calm amidst the strange quiet. "May I ask who?" His words died in his throat. A sudden unseen force seized him, yanking him forward with brutal speed. He was drawn directly towards the being, unable to resist. The blood, which had now risen past his thighs, sloshed around him. The being, pipe still held delicately, brought its face inches from his own. Its eyes, ancient and unnervingly still, swept over him from head to toe. Mok Gyeong-un met its gaze without flinching. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice steady. A flicker of a smile touched the being's red lips, then vanished, replaced by an expression of serious contemplation. It waved its hand. Mok Gyeong-un's body shot upwards, smashing with bone-jarring force against the cavern ceiling. He rebounded, plunging into the blood-filled cavity with a loud splash. He gasped, sputtering as he pushed himself upright, his entire body drenched. He swept a hand through his blood-soaked hair, pushing it from his eyes. The being spoke, its voice clear and resonant, echoing from everywhere at once. "Foolish mortal, empty your soul and render your soul to me." Mok Gyeong-un scratched his head, feigning annoyance. "Like the demonic monk, wandering spirits always covet the bodies of others? Can't you do anything without someone else's body?" The being clicked its tongue, a soft, dismissive sound. It tapped its pipe lightly into the blood at its feet. Instantly, several thick strands of blood erupted from the pool, elongating into wicked whips that lashed out, coiling around Mok Gyeong-un's arms and legs, binding him tightly. He strained against them, but the restraints held firm, far stronger than he anticipated. He smacked his lips. Now he understood why ancient texts warned of the green ghost's extreme danger, why they called for a legion of diviners to confront such a foe. He knew little of true sorcery, barely having begun his studies. The being, watching him struggle, made a gesture with its pipe, drawing an invisible vertical line in the air towards Mok Gyeong-un. A searing pain erupted across his chest, his clothes tearing and turning crimson in a precise vertical slit. The cut was deep, the agony considerable. Still, Mok Gyeong-un's expression remained largely unchanged. The being's eyebrow rose, a flicker of surprise in its eerie eyes. It seemed to expect a scream. "You're a child with strong endurance." "I'm used to it," Mok Gyeong-un replied flatly. "Used to it? Then can you endure this as well?" With those words, the being lifted the pipe high. The blood that filled the lower half of the cavity surged, rising with astonishing speed. In moments, the entire space was submerged, a vast crimson ocean. Mok Gyeong-un, bound and helpless, floated in the depths, holding his breath, the world a suffocating red. The being observed him, a smirk playing on its lips. It wanted to see fear, the primal terror of suffocation in a confined, inescapable space. It glided closer, its unnerving eyes fixed on his. It reached out, its touch cold on his chin, and its voice whispered, "The emotion you're feeling now is fear." It stopped. The being's words trailed off, its gaze fixed on Mok Gyeong-un's eyes. There was no fear there, no wavering, only a steady, unwavering stare. You're peculiar, for a living human to have such eyes." A hint of genuine curiosity entered its voice. Mok Gyeong-un, though submerged, flicked his tongue. The taste was unmistakably blood, richer and more vibrant than any he had known. Its viscosity was perfect, the stickiness of pure blood. All his senses screamed that this was real, that he was drowning in pure gore. Yet, a cold clarity settled over him. This was not life. This was death. He had seen the blood of countless concurrent killing demons, felt the lingering vitality within their spilled essence. This, however, felt utterly devoid of life, an empty illusion. It was not real. A sharp snort escaped him. If his senses could be so thoroughly deceived, then everything he perceived was a lie. Then the blood vanished. As if it had never been there, the crimson tide receded, leaving the cavern dry and solid once more. Mok Gyeong-un stood on solid ground, unbound. The being's eyes widened, a flicker of true astonishment. It had expected him to struggle, to gasp for air, to eventually succumb to the hallucination like every other living being. Instead, he had simply broken free. "You're more interesting than you look," the being mused, a slow smile spreading across its red lips. It approached Mok Gyeong-un and tapped his shoulder with the pipe. A crushing weight slammed into him, forcing him to his knees. His right knee dug deep into the stone floor, a testament to the immense, unseen force behind that seemingly light tap. The being took a deep puff from its pipe, exhaling a plume of smoke directly into Mok Gyeong-un's face. "Mortal, if you offer your soul to me of your own accord, I shall grant your wish." "Wish?" Mok Gyeong-un questioned, pushing himself up to one knee. "Yes. For a boy not even in his prime to have such eyes, you must not have lived an ordinary life. Hand over your soul to me. Then I shall dismember your enemies and make even their souls disappear." You're overflowing with confidence. A wild, mad laughter erupted from the being. It shook the entire cavern, a deep, rumbling sound that vibrated through Mok Gyeong-un's very bones. This was indeed a monster on a completely different scale, one that had transcended the realm of mere wandering spirits to become a true Imai-mang-yang. The being, after its fit of laughter subsided, sneered. "The only reason you can utter impudent words to me and remain unscathed is because I want to take your soul. So be grateful for the mercy I bestow upon you." "Is this something to be grateful for?" Mok Gyeong-un asked, pushing himself to his feet. "You have no fear at all." The being tapped his chin with the pipe, tilting his head. It examined his face, its gaze almost appraising. "At least your face is to my liking. It wouldn't be bad since your soul is beautiful." You're quite eager to covet my body, Mok Gyeong-un observed, his tone flat. Once I have decided, your soul is mine, and if I refuse, a sneer distorted the being's beautiful features. Although your soul may be slightly damaged, I will take it by force. Someone other than you tried to do that, Mok Gyeong-un said, gesturing vaguely towards the cavern ceiling. But there's a failed monster right above, you know. The being chuckled, a hollow, mocking sound. You dare compare me to such a lowly ghost? If I put my mind to it, it wouldn't be too difficult to extinguish your soul and seize your body. If you're so confident, why don't you try taking it? Mok Gyeong-un challenged, a hint of steel in his voice. You're impudent. If that's what you desire, I shall take it by force. As it spoke, the being removed the pipe from Mok Gyeong-un's chin, preparing to raise it above its head. At that moment, Mok Gyeong-un shrugged, his head slightly lowered. Have you suddenly become afraid? The being asked, its lips curving upward in triumph. No, Mok Gyeong-un replied, a strange glint in his eyes. I just remembered something interesting. Something interesting, the being echoed, genuinely puzzled. In response, Mok Gyeong-un lifted something in both hands. The being's eyes, ancient and knowing, instantly wavered. It recognized the object without a second glance. It was the book crafted from human skin, now gleaming with an unsettling, glossy sheen, perhaps from the blood of the deceased Jo Il-sang it had absorbed. You, the being began, its voice a low growl. According to the ancient texts, the older the monster, the more it has a medium that it is connected to and dwells in, Mok Gyeong-un explained, his gaze unwavering. This book must be it, right? You're doing a foolish thing. The being's composure cracked, a hint of desperation entering its tone. It doesn't seem like a foolish thing, judging by your cautious behavior, Mok Gyeong-un countered. You're really making me angry. The being's words were barely out before Mok Gyeong-un's body was flung into the air, slamming against the ceiling with a sickening thud. He fell back to the floor, only to be lifted again by an unseen hand, his head striking the ceiling this time. Blood flowed from his forehead, tracing a crimson path down his pale face. The being continued its assault, slamming Mok Gyeong-un against the cavern wall repeatedly, a relentless barrage of impacts. Fresh blood burst from his mouth with each collision. His body went limp, half unconscious, but the being held him suspended in the air. Put that down immediately, the being commanded, its hand outstretched. Mok Gyeong-un coughed, a gurgling sound in his throat. Why don't you just take it? Why go through the trouble? Foolish mortal. I'm giving you a chance. A chance? Yes. Mok Gyeong-un's eyes, though hazy with pain, sharpened. It's not that you can't touch it directly, is it? The being remained silent. Its lack of response was all the confirmation Mok Gyeong-un needed. This ancient spirit, for all its immense power, could not directly touch the human skin book. If it could, it would have simply snatched it away, not resorted to inflicting pain to force him to relinquish it. You're really asking for death, the being snarled, its voice laced with fury. Even if you have that, you can't do anything with it. What can someone who is neither a Taoist nor a diviner do? Fine, I'll give up on your soul. I'll just kill you like this. As the being reached out to deliver a final, fatal blow, something utterly unexpected happened. A sharp, tearing sound echoed through the cavern. Mok Gyeong-un, with a deliberate, shocking act, bit into the cover of the human skin book. The green ghost being froze, its beautiful features twisting in absolute perplexity. It had faced countless diviners, monks, and practitioners, yet none had ever attempted such a barbaric act, let alone succeeded. The book's evil energy was immense, rendering it impervious to ordinary sealing methods or even fire. Mok Gyeong-un himself had tried to tear it apart with brute force during the earlier impacts, to no avail. But by chance, he had discovered that only the outer cover of the tome was truly made of human skin. His choice, in that moment of desperation, was simple. Mok Gyeong-un chewed, tearing off a piece of the human skin cover. He gnawed at it with fierce determination. A sharp gasp escaped the green ghost. It clutched its chest, its pale, delicate brows contorting in agony. A primal, almost insane impulse had guided Mok Gyeong-un. No one in their right mind would ever consider tearing a piece of skin from a tome bound in human flesh and bringing it to their lips. The very thought repelled. Yet, as the eerie aura thickened in the confined space, he bit down. A strange, leathery resistance met his teeth. He gnawed, his jaw working with relentless determination. The substance proved incredibly tough, refusing to yield, refusing to break or even scratch his teeth. Despite the lack of immediate damage, a peculiar effect rippled through the air. The green ghost, the spectral being that had haunted his every move, clutched at its chest. Its delicate features, usually composed in an unnerving calm, twisted into a grimace of pain. Mok Gyeong-un, observing this, intensified his chewing, a spark of understanding igniting in his mind. The strange act was not in vain. A guttural cry ripped from the phantom's throat. Its eyes, previously a murky green, flared crimson, mirroring the rage that consumed it. With a violent swing of its long pipe, the blood of the fallen Jo Il-sung, still slick on the cold floor, levitated. It coalesced into a crimson vortex, spinning with dizzying speed. Mok Gyeong-un's gaze remained fixed on the swirling blood. It was no mere trick of light. The droplets, a macabre dance of death, moved with an overwhelming intensity. His eyes, though human, strained to follow the impossible rotation, each tiny bead a blur of motion. Against all odds, he tracked their path. A flicker of surprise crossed the green ghost's distorted face. It recognized his uncanny ability to perceive the blood's trajectory, an impossible feat for a mortal untaught in the mystic arts. His physical body and reflexes, though honed, should not have granted him such insight. The green ghost's pipe swung again, this time pointing directly at Mok Gyeong-un. The rapidly spinning blood droplets, a crimson torrent, surged towards him. A chilling whisper accompanied their advance. In that very instant, Mok Gyeong-un moved. He slid across the blood-slicked floor, throwing his body towards the green ghost. He aimed to close the distance, to break the spell. He was almost upon the phantom when the assault began. A rain of blood, sharp and precise, descended upon his torso. Each droplet pierced his flesh, not with the blunt force of a weapon, but with a tearing, burning sensation. It felt as though tiny, invisible blades ripped at his skin from within. A frown creased Mok Gyeong-un's brow. He was no stranger to pain, but this was different. This was not the simple agony of a cut or a bruise. The blood, having penetrated his skin, now writhed inside him, stimulating every nerve ending, an unbearable torment. For the first time, a low groan escaped his lips. The green ghost's mouth curved into a cruel smile, savoring his suffering. It made a quenching motion with its fist, and the blood within Mok Gyeong-un's body burrowed deeper, 1,000 needles of agony. Yet he did not writhe, did not beg. This defiance seemed to amuse and frustrate the phantom in equal measure. It clicked its tongue, exhaled a hazy smoke from its pipe, and extended it as if preparing for the final strike. Its voice, laced with contempt, echoed through the chamber. Then, from the depths of his pain, Mok Gyeong-un uttered a single, slurred word. Demonic monk. The green ghost paused, its head cocked in confusion. What are you babbling about? Demonic monk, he repeated, his voice strained but clear. As if summoned by his plea, a spectral figure burst through the ceiling. The demonic monk materialized, a hazy form, yet strangely marred. Black spots marred its ethereal body, a sign of its weakened state. The green ghost chuckled, a cold, hollow sound. It was you? It asked, a hint of recognition in its voice. To Mok Gyeong-un's utter confusion, the demonic monk knelt, bowing its head in deference to the green ghost. A surge of disbelief washed over him. Was this a higher-level entity, dictating the loyalty of his own servant? The very idea contradicted the knowledge he held from ancient texts, from the wisdom of diviners. The green ghost's words confirmed his fear. You seem to have spiritual talent, connected to a wandering spirit, but unfortunately this damn fellow is nothing more than my subordinate. Subordinate. The word hung heavy in the air. Was there a past connection, a shared history in their previous lives? If so, this was a severe setback. The demonic monk, his most potent ally, was seemingly under the control of his adversary. He was truly alone. A guttural growl escaped him as he gnawed on the human skin once more. The green ghost recoiled, clutching its chest in renewed agony, its face contorted with rage. "You must be desperate to die," it shrieked, swinging its pipe. The blood droplets that had tormented Mok Gyeong-un's body suddenly retracted, extracting themselves from his flesh. He felt a fleeting moment of relief, but it was quickly replaced by dread. The extracted blood merged, forming a single razor-sharp thorn. The green ghost made a downward striking motion with its pipe, aiming the thorn directly at Mok Gyeong-un's heart. He rolled, desperately trying to evade the lethal strike. The thorn embedded itself in the floor where he had just been. A scoff of disdain escaped the green ghost. It swung its pipe again, and the bloodthorn impossibly changed direction, arcing towards Mok Gyeong-un once more. The speed was terrifying. There was no escape. Then, a sudden jarring impact. Something large and hazy appeared from nowhere, pushing Mok Gyeong-un violently aside. It was the demonic monk. The green ghost howled, a sound of pure fury. "You damn fool!" The demonic monk stood, its spectral hands waving as if in confusion, yet its presence was undeniable. Mok Gyeong-un, equally baffled, watched. The very entity that had bowed in subservience moments ago had just intervened, shielding him from a fatal blow. "Why?" The green ghost's voice, now laced with a bitter amusement, broke the silence. "Oh, are you saying you'll fulfill your duty as a servant?" The demonic monk's troubled expression was palpable, even through its hazy form. Mok Gyeong-un, despite the dire circumstances, felt a smirk touch his lips. Regardless of its internal conflict, the demonic monk was helping him. This was a critical turning point. "Demonic monk," Mok Gyeong-un commanded. The spectral form moved, blocking the green ghost's path with unwavering obedience. Indeed, the demonic monk could not defy his orders. A flicker of hope ignited within him. Perhaps, even against a higher-level entity, a fight could be forced. But the green ghost moved with blinding speed. In an instant, it was upon the demonic monk, its hand closing around the larger spirit's neck. The demonic monk, despite its size, could not move. The difference in their power was absolute. "Then I'll kill both of you," the green ghost hissed. Mok Gyeong-un, feeling the desperate urgency, chewed on the human skin with renewed ferocity. He had to free the demonic monk. The green ghost, enraged, waved its pipe, its face a mask of distorted fury. The scattered blood droplets, still suspended in the air, swirled around Mok Gyeong-un, transforming into a rapidly rotating ring of sharp thorns. This time, there was no doubt. It intended to end him. In that fleeting moment, Mok Gyeong-un made a decision. It was an act of pure, desperate defiance. He swallowed. The human skin, tough and unyielding, slid down his throat. The green ghost's bloody eyes widened, wavering in disbelief. No one had ever bitten the skin, let alone swallowed it. "You crazy mortal!" it shrieked. The torrent of blood thorns, a deadly, swirling vortex, rushed towards Mok Gyeong-un. He gasped as they pierced him, 1,000 searing points of pain. His body twisted involuntarily, his muscles spasming, his nerves screaming in protest. "I'll tear your body to pieces and extract," the green ghost began, but its voice caught. Its hand, holding the pipe, trembled, its face contorted, not with rage, but with excruciating agony. "Ooh, what on earth?" It glared at Mok Gyeong-un, its eyes filled with incomprehension. The pain it felt from his chewing was nothing compared to this. Its very essence, its soul, felt as if it were cracking, splintering from within. Mok Gyeong-un understood. His stomach, where the human skin now resided, burned with an unholy heat. It was a fire that consumed from the inside, a pain he hadn't known since his earliest encounters with poisons. He had grown accustomed to internal torment. A bitter smile touched his lips. Suddenly, the suffering green ghost materialized in front of him, its hand clamping around his throat. "You mere lowly mortal!" Crimson tears, thick and viscous, dripped from its enraged eyes. Its appearance, grotesque and filled with a profound resentment, underscored its nature as a wandering spirit. "How dare someone like you?" it spat, tightening its grip with both hands. Mok Gyeong-un instinctively clawed at its wrists, struggling for breath. As his fingers brushed the green ghost's ethereal skin, a bizarre scene exploded in his mind. A vast hall, stained crimson with untold slaughter. Countless bodies lay mangled. In the center, a figure, drenched in blood, slumped, panting, a sword plunged into the floor beside it. That figure was the green ghost. Its form was wretched, on the brink of collapse. It turned its head, its gaze drawn to a towering throne at the hall's end. A figure sat there, obscured by shadow, a chilling presence. The green ghost stared, its eyes burning with an unbearable hatred. It wailed, spitting blood, yet no sound reached Mok Gyeong-un's ears. Fueled by a furious despair, the green ghost clutched the hilt of its sword. It tore a strip from its own clothes, wrapping it around its wrist, preparing for a final, desperate charge towards the throne. But, in a blink, the shadowed figure on the throne was upon it. A hand plunged into the green ghost's chest. The figure withdrew something still beating. It was a heart, the impossible sight of one's own living heart, torn from the chest, then brutally crushed by another. A deafening scream, tearing through the illusion, echoed in Mok Gyeong-un's mind. The vision vanished. The green ghost stood before him, its crown gone, its hair falling limply around its face. Its expression was one of profound shock and agony. A woman. She was a woman. The regal, overwhelming aura had masked her true form, but now, stripped of its facade, it was clear. Why was she reacting like this? Mok Gyeong-un saw it then, a thin, red thread emerging from his own body, connecting him to her. And not just to her. Another thread extended from him, linking to the demonic monk. A terrifying realization dawned. The green ghost screamed, clutching at its hair. For me to be a servant,